I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Got a good one in the works for you. Joining me today is author and researcher Adam Farris. Adam, thanks for coming on. For the new people, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. Adam Farris, Adam Farris, biblical researcher, writer. Got a graphic novel out, Five Stones. It's on Amazon right now. My story's pretty crazy, kind of a niche in a niche. 4 years ago, I was led to essentially share the good news in a different way and just really like dive into actual scripture and just figure this thing out. I'm a why guy. And at that point, I was a manager. So I was in the why world. That's all you do as a manager, explain why. So I just, the initial form, as I mentioned, took form as the graphic novel. It's a really gritty take on the David and Goliath story, focusing on the actual story, the Nephilim aspect, the true blood and the grit of the story. It's, it is what it is. And then, from there, I really dove into just researching. I wanted to find out more about the giants. And then on that just kind of went to tumbling. I got into David's Mighty Men and all that crazy stuff. Came on your show and talked about that. I appreciated that opportunity. And I hit the ground running really hard with that. Did a bunch of podcasts and got to be honest, got a little burnt out on that. And I had to go back to what I started on this, what the passion was. And that's really just the research and the learning. So when I was on this journey, while I was, doing my research, when I would read the Bible, I would get to Revelation. And I always had a feeling like some point you're going to spend some time here. So again, it was a 3-year journey. So the first year I read it and I felt that when I got to Revelation, so I knew, and I kept going, did the giant thing. And then the second time I got to Revelation, just for fun, I was like, well, let me read it like it's a map to see if I can find a time frame. Because I don't know if anybody's really like dove into Revelation, but it's a puzzle. At face value, it's a really crazy story, because that's kind of how the Bible works. But I've found it is a puzzle. It's a lot of metaphors and a lot of figurative and a lot of things across referencing to tell us a story that could not be manipulated as much as things can be manipulated, right? Because if it's good and evil, how do you secretly tell everybody what's going to happen without it being manipulated? Well, it's got to be a crazy puzzle. So I started noticing some weird patterns and rhymes, if you will. So the third time I read through the Bible, I always had the same feeling. When I got to the end, it was immediately start over, keep going. And I'd get a different translation. That time I didn't feel it. Now, coincidentally, it was when I was kind of getting burnt out with doing massive podcasts and just jamming the giant thing. So it just took some time for me. I felt like it was some Adam time. So I sat back for a couple months and just read Revelation every day. Read it. And then I started noticing, again, this is a puzzle. And I got really interested and really wanted to start figuring this thing out. And the way it kind of went was super organic. Again, this is a niche for me. I didn't start this like a business. It's not business focused for me at all. This is just fun for me to like have good, engaging conversations. And really, at the end of the day, and I'll be cheesy, but if I can get one person to be interested to go back and try to read it again, kind of that's really what it is for me.
Yeah, man. Well, I think we'll be able to. I think we'll be able to do that today. I'm so excited about this. I just want to jump in and say that because if I remember correctly, we both appreciate the Old Testament.
Yes.
And I'm excited to go beyond that today and touch on the end, right? Dun, dun,
Yes.
dun. The end of the Bible, the end of the world, the apocalypse, all that. I like what you're saying about it, that it can't be, it's designed in a way to where it's not easily or can't be manipulated. like there's another layer to it. I'm sure there's multiple layers to it because it is so esoteric. And it's a book I haven't touched on much on here because of that, because I do want to dedicate time to it. We'll pull little verses here and there and talk about them, but as far as the book as a whole, I know there's so much more there, and I feel like it takes the kind of dedication that you're referring to. You know, you're like, I really had to go back and read and reread and all that. So I think puzzle, it's the puzzle. It's a maze, if you will. It's a map. It's a story, and it's all enveloped. And I want to remind people too, John, the Revelator, who wrote the book of Revelation, did so on an island. It's called Patmos, if I remember correctly. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site to this day. There's a cave there where he's said to have had the visions and wrote the book. And the mainstream acknowledges it as an actual site.
Yeah.
So if in time and time again, that's what I'm finding with the Bible is I'll be reading and I'll see a random king or a random town name and
Hmm.
I'll go research it and it's still there. It's really there. Or the king was a real guy. We have artifacts from his kingdom. We have manuscripts or tablets from his kingdom. It always checks out time and time again. The book, it's amazing to me that people think that this is, a bunch of crazy woo-woo spiritual hogwash or whatever people like to say. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry I went off on a tangent there, but I'm excited about getting into Revelation, and I think there's something to it, down to John having the visions and it being a historical location to this day.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And to your point, like even Balaam, like with the talking donkey, he's mentioned outside of the Bible as a seer and getting visions at night, or God's visit him at night. And that's the way the story goes, is when he's visited, he's like, well, stay the night, I'll tell you what happens in the morning. So it's
Hmm.
like so much of this is out there. Honestly, and you'll agree, a lot of people agree, it's to the point where you you're not believing on purpose at this point. I mean,
Hmm.
come on. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, so I had,
Balaam, right? Balaam the donkey.
yeah.
There's
Well,
like
yeah,
there's
he was the one
evidence
that
for
wrote
that.
the talking. Yeah, yes, yes. The Del Allah, I'm getting that wrong. Inscriptions. I have on my YouTube and my Substack, everybody listening, I have a video for this, but it's in a transcription found in Jordan on a piece of a wall, right? Like they were just doing
That's
demolition. You know how this things go when the way they find stuff, and they found this piece, and I have it all listed out, and I've got pictures of it, and it literally lists it, says it,
that's
references
cool.
him. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
man, that's so cool. It reminded me of King Balis, which is one of these random kings I found. He's mentioned in Jeremiah 40:14, I think. Just
mhm.
one verse. He's only mentioned, I think, in the Bible once, and it's in that one verse. It's King Balis of the Ammonites, recorded in the Bible and recorded in history. He's the guy who sent Ishmael to kill Gedaliah during the Babylonian exile period. But anyway, archaeological evidence has been found. There's a seal impression that was discovered in 1999 that confirms his existence, and all this confirms his historical role. And it's all in the right time period too. It's shortly after Jerusalem falls, just like the Bible says. And there's all other manner of things that they found. There's a small seal that dates to like 600 BC that was discovered, and it has a description on there that says belonging to Balis,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
king of the sons of Ammon. So it all checks out, and that's just one
yes,
guy who's mentioned one time in the Bible, and it
yeah.
all checks out.
Yeah. So, which crazy mental gymnastics. If we see those little things and they match up, then that means there were some giant dudes walking around this planet, right?
Hmm.
There was a donkey that talked. There was so many wild things that happened if we have that one little piece
Well,
of evidence.
That's what I love about that story, which it's like so crazy. It's one of the weirdest, wildest stories in there, and they've got the plaque there that like commemorates it. And
Mhm.
that's like Mount Hermon, Genesis 6. You know, there's tablets that were found up there that commemorate the Watchers coming down and taking an oath. And then the
Yeah,
mountains, Mount Hermon, it's called Mountain of the Oath.
it's crazy, man. It's right there
It's
in front of us, man.
time and time again. Like we could do shows plural on this kind of stuff
Well,
because it
the,
never ends.
the glass tiles, I have a video on this too. There was glass tiles, embossed, glossy tiles of found in jails in Egypt. Old, they discovered all this stuff. I did videos on it a long time ago, so forgive me, everybody. But it turns out to be like trophies because it was trophies of Amorites, Cushites, and Jebusites. And it was
Mhm.
kind of like the way it was found, you wouldn't put that effort into just a regular prisoner. Prisoner's a prisoner, generally go into slavery or whatever the case.
Mhm.
Why would you make special tile? You can't making tile in Egypt back then for a special prisoner that you found. Those are trophies. So it's like a whole nother evidence of some wild
Yeah.
stuff on the earth.
And this is like as we speak, people are finding stuff.
Yeah.
And it just I love it, man. And like it's one of the biggest ones for me. And I know we'll get to the revelation and all this today, but maybe this ties in. Who knows? When in 1947, when they found fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Enoch was in there, that was a big one for me. And the lore around that is that the guy they bring in the big dog archaeologist to come in and look at the fragments and solidify them, make sure that they're legit, just give them a nod of approval with the expert eye. And they said when they brought him in to look at the Book of Enoch in 47, it was the same night that the UN was talking about the creation of Israel as a state. They didn't do it until 48, but the talks began in 47, apparently on the same night that this guy was looking at the Book of Enoch, which in the first chapter says this was meant to be found. Well, it says this was meant for a later generation, a generation which is to come.
Well, it does actually have to do with what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Let's
It
go.
does.
Let's go.
So, yes, and that's what was crazy because the patterns and the rhymes that I was mentioning was the weird way that the world works in Revelation, in the explanation of things happening. So if you remember, and I want to say this too, really quick. So um, when I did my research, I just stopped. I stopped doing content. I stopped doing podcasts, everything. I just focused on this, and I got back to me and my passion and what excited me, and I really, really dove into Revelation. So Bennett at Broadcasting Seeds, if you're familiar, we're buddies, and he had, I went offline for a while, and he reached out and was like, "Yo, buddy, check," which I really appreciated. I was like, "Yeah, hey, I just, doing some mental stuff and just kind of chilling out. I'm in
It gets heavy.
Revelation."
This gets
Yeah,
heavy. I know what you're talking about, taking a break. I know.
I mean, it hit me hard, man. Everybody, let's listen, and this is spiritual
You start
warfare.
look. It's spiritual warfare, exactly. And I'll let you finish, but I gotta say, that's what it is. Once you start looking into certain things, especially eschatology or any manner of demonology or the Watchers or any of the spiritual being type of material, you're going to find out that okay, yeah, this really is a spiritual war, like the Bible says. There are
Yeah.
forces. There's Ephesians 6, principalities, forces, evilness in high places all around us. Even though we can't see them, doesn't mean they're not there. And you find that out once you start cracking open certain topics.
You couldn't have said it any better because that's literally disclaimer. These are my opinions. This is my interpretation. This is how you got to say the thing.
Yeah.
I don't claim to know everything about Revelation, But what you just said, I feel is how revelation works. So I reached out to, I was talking to Bennett and I was like, hey, let's do a show because that's one thing we like to do is just go crazy. So I didn't want to get back into the podcast circuit because again, I it's not supposed to be business for me, and I felt like I was focusing on that too much, so I didn't. So that's why I reached out to you because you're the only other person that I reached out to and was like, "Hey, I did this." Because remember, I sent you a clip of the broadcast and the
Mhm.
show we did. I didn't push nothing if you were interested because I really enjoyed our conversation last time. So that's where I'm at. Is like
Oh,
I'm
cool,
only
man.
doing it if it's fun. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah, well, that's cool.
hats off to you, dude.
I didn't know the backstory, but that's awesome. And I got shout out to the Broadcasting Seeds podcast and Bennett, and you sent me the episode. I listened to it. I listened to about 15 to 20 minutes of it, turned it off, and said I want to talk with him about this.
My man, that's what I was hoping
You know,
for. I wanted
sometimes
it to
I
be
if I know you guys are going to come on the show, I won't finish the podcast because I want to hear some of it live and in the moment,
yes.
you know. But
Oh no,
I knew I
no,
wanted to talk about it.
tight. Yeah, because again, man, I time is valuable. You know what I'm saying? So anything I apply my time to, I want to be able to enjoy it. So again, hats off to you. That's why I reached out and
Oh, cool,
appreciate
man.
you
That's
bringing me
awesome.
back on.
Yeah, brother.
So, Revelation to get you interested. Babylon is mentioned in Revelation. That's the first thing that really stuck to me. Because if you remember the way I research, I don't take anything else. I just do Bible, and I do it like I had been trained as a manager. If you remember my story, that I knew that was what everything that God had put in my place to know how to research and whatnot. So it's basically like I got to find your tire. Where'd that tire go? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's how I look at it. And initially, again, I started noticing Babylon, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Once as a metaphor, okay, it's used too much in Revelation, and what I mean by that is as in chronological order. Babylon falls really early in the Bible, and it's not like super dramatic. It just falls, and then other nations come into play.
Mm-hmm.
But in Revelation, Babylon is the key culprit, if you will. That didn't make sense. So I'm like, okay, since that's sticking to me, I'll go there. What are they really saying? Why is that the metaphor? Um, so we'll get into that a little bit later, but I want to get you interested because again, this is very spiritual. When you read Revelation, there ain't no dragon, it's not a woman standing on the moon. They're metaphors, which we're going to get into. My opinion, my interpretation. That's my disclaimer. So,
Mm-hmm. It's
chapters,
it's interesting that you mentioned Babylon. I won't go into it either, but I'll give you my thoughts on that too. We'll
mm,
compare notes because
please.
if there's anything pertaining to the book of Revelation that I feel like I've stumbled upon recently in recent days, it pertains to Babylon and the mention of Babylon. And I got some verses on that I can show you. We
Perfect.
can see where we're at. Like, I want to hear what you have to say, obviously, and I want to
Yeah.
show you some things too and get your thoughts on them. That's cool. But go ahead, man. I don't want to
Yeah.
stop you.
And no, and please do, because again, that's why I reached out. Because I only want to do a good back and forth conversation. I'm not a scholar. I just have thoughts and opinions. So, yes, interrupt me, everything. Chapters 1 through 3, we're not going to focus on that a lot, but I need to point out something specific that's going to lead to everything else. And it's an obvious one. So it is the letters to these seven angels over these seven churches. We miss that a bit when we don't focus on the supernatural because it's the letters to the seven churches. It's not. It's the letters to the seven angels over these seven churches. And I got for this show, I'm using my old school, the Good News Bible, just because it's kind of smaller in my little area.
Okay,
But
cool.
um,
Is it like Revelation 2 where it says here it's the message to Ephesus?
yeah, so chapters 1 through 3 are the letters,
Yeah.
and
Oh, cool. Yeah, I see. It says Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira. I don't know how to say that one though. Sardis, Philadelphia,
Hmm.
and Laodicea
Yep,
are some of the churches, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And so another thing too, I mentioned before we were talking, one thing I really wanted to find was some form of a timestamp, something that I could kind of use um, to kind of figure out, because Revelation, backtrack a little bit, you got the seven letters, but then after the seven letters, you do seem to find a timeline. And a timeline from beginning to end. And I'll make that make sense later. So I was like, all right, if that is in there, which is actually chapters 12 through 22. Chapters 12 through 22, not to get too ahead of myself, I tend to do, is the actual timeline from the fall to the very end, which is nuts. So when I figured that out, I'm like, okay, now is there anything in there that I could use as a date? Because if you have one date, you know where everything else is going to land, right? So anyway, so we get the angels of the seven churches. Now, if you read those letters, the letters are like, hey, you've been, well, some of them are, you've been doing good. Notice there's some stuff you need to tighten up on. Two of them mentioned the accuser. You know, you've been hanging out with the accuser. You put your land in the accuser. I don't like to say the S name, but you know who I'm talking about, everybody. Don't give him any power. Um, so it's like,
The dragon,
wow.
is
Yeah.
he the dragon as
Yeah.
well,
The
you think?
accuser's Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a verse for people for context. And I see exactly what you're saying. Revelation 1, starting with verse 9, it cracks into this, says, I was in, this is John talking, I was in the spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet saying, write in a book what you see and send it to the seven churches, to Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. And I need to brush up on pronunciation for a couple of those. Sorry about that. But yeah, they're just for context. This is John having, it sounds like maybe the one of the kickoff of his actual revelations is to write this down. He's being told to write it down.
Yes. So the mystery of these seven stars, which thou sawest in my right hand, and these seven golden candlesticks. Seven stars are the angels of the seven churches, and these seven candlesticks which thou sawest are the seven churches. So I thought about it again as a manager, and I was breaking it down. The angels are over the churches, and these letters aren't, hey man, missed you, can't wait to see you next summer, right? What these are addressing are angelic influence. They're the angels over the churches, and the churches, for whatever reason, have been infiltrated. Now, we're going to get more into this, but that's Genesis 6. Genesis 6 was not just, and we talked about this last time, was not just the fall, and that was that. It was everything. The fall has in Babylon has everything to do with everything. So
And
this is a
Genesis 3:15, in my opinion. I would,
yes.
I'm with you. Yes, it's Genesis 6, but I would even take it back to Genesis 3:15, where there's that line of demarcation between the seed of Eve and the seed of Satan, and it suggests that there is going to be this other faction that that is in a constant state of war with humanity, and those would be it'd be the lineage of that serpent seed, if you want to call it that, that would infiltrate the churches, in my opinion.
Yes, because if these are the seven uh these are the seven stars, which that's another point I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I do that a lot.
Mm.
If these are the seven stars of God, why would there be anything bad at those churches? Right? And just to making sense, not this or that, none of that, but just making sense. If these are the seven stars of God, why is there anything, one line of bad stuff? Because what the fall brought. And there's a line in here that I will say now. It's Revelation 17, and it's very, very important. With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. That's in 17, referencing Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
Break that down. Remember, we talked about kings and princes being spiritual beings, which we're going to go super deep into on this show. Um, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. The kings of the earth committed fornication. Who are the kings of the earth? Spiritual beings, angels, fornication, Genesis 6. And the inhabitants of the earth, humans, have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Think about that line. Drunk is a result of wine, right? So the wine of her fornication was the fall, which got us drunk. The result of the fall was the demise of humans. Babylon, Revelation 17. So it's like, what? So there's more than just a couple angels? What?
Yeah.
There's more than Michael and Gabriel and that's that? So, all right, painting a
And
picture.
the women on the Scarlet Beast, there's
Oh,
all
oh,
this, there's
oh,
all
we're gonna get
this. Okay, cool. But that's, I mean, if you go back, I think that Babylon is like you said, it's a kingdom, it's a city. Well, you didn't say that, but I'm saying it. It's a city, it represents a kingdom, and I think it represents an entity, a principality. And from what I can tell, it's a female Elohim. And it's yeah. So I mean because she's if you go look at Ishtar and Nana, she's always riding the beast. And then right here it says in Revelation 17, so he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names.
So I'm excited to get to that part with you
Yeah.
because you have talked a lot about Ishtar, and I have kind of a question, kind of a thought that I can't wait to pick your brain about, and it's about that. I don't want to get again
Yeah, we'll get
drum
there.
roll
We'll
ahead of
get there.
myself.
And I don't want to just throw my opinion too much on this thing. But I do think that it's the Bible. It has multiple meanings, and oftentimes the kingdom is also representative of the entity. And like you're saying, like the kings themselves are basically entities because they would do these type of rituals to call down a spirit and call in a spirit into them to give them divine right to rule. And they did that through ritual, and they would be embodied by one of these older spirits. So they basically, if you look at it that way, they basically are these other entities, like mouthpieces for them. There's other ways to
Mhm.
interpret that, I understand, but that's if you look at the rituals of Osiris, they were doing that. They were on the Nile, kings in the boat, floating down the Nile. They've got the priest craft around them. They're doing the ritual and they're calling in this entity to embody them, to make them
Yeah,
a little G priest king sort of a thing.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So all right. So
I'm done. I'm done. Sorry.
oh no, no, you're
I'm
good, and
talking too
keep doing
much.
it, please. So 1 through 3, like I said, for what I'm doing, we established that there's it's a spiritual world and there's heavy angelic influence, right? This is what I wanted to bring from chapter 1 through 3. I don't know if I said it. I'll say it again if I did. What we're doing tonight is jumping around a couple different chapters that I have some really good notes on. You said it earlier, and probably before we started recording. I could go on this for like another year and probably find 12% more, 30% more. So right now, I think I have some good notes from my opinion on where we might be in reality. I'm not saying I'm right, I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm just saying that I spent a lot of time and this is kind of what I'm thinking. So we're just having fun. It's all good.
Oh yeah.
So 1 through 3, we're good on that. Chapters 4 through 7. are the seven seals. And there's a lot of cool stuff in there to point out. Um, so all right, chapter 5, this might be open to interpretation, but it's the one where John the scroll, there's no one that can open the scroll, and then the lamb pops up and opens the scroll. And it says specifically, and the lamb appeared to have been killed. It had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God that have been sent throughout the whole earth. I take that what they're saying is that is the actual, after the transfiguration, that is when literally time wise, and I think this is a manipulation of time too, because I feel like John was there in his visions before Jesus actually passed, and then after the transfiguration. You know what I mean? Because there's examples of when Jesus was talking to Moses and Elijah at the same time in their different times. I don't know if you ever looked into that, but I think this is a good example of that too. This would kind of timestamp Revelation a little bit because they're referencing before and after the transfiguration, and specifically Jesus is the Lamb, and then it references those 7 spirits. Again, I don't think the time frame in Revelation starts till 12, but I think that's an arguable point. You know what I mean? I don't know if you agree on that. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that because we're going to get to chapter 6. 6 is crazy.
Seven seals.
So, yes, which is really wild, man. Now, the John sees the 4 living creatures in chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
These are the same living creatures that Ezekiel saw, and they're nuts. Really cool mental gymnastics on this is it's the face of a lion, a man, eagle, and an ox, and they have eyes all over them. I think that's arguable point. What they're saying is that's the all-seeing eyes of God, but specific, and this is crazy. It's for a face of a lion, so it's the spirit over all predatory animals. Face of an ox, spirit over domestic animals. Face of a man, spirit over men, and then the bird, spirit over all the fowl. You notice there's no representation in water. There's no sea creatures. There's no predatory animal. There's sharks. There's no fish. We talked a little bit about water last time, but there's something up with water. If you look at the way water tracks in the Bible, it's almost like its own realm, and it is away from God to the point where baptism, well, like to get to heaven, you got to ask Jesus into your heart and be baptized, cleansing in the water. So it's like I just noticed that was really crazy with the 4 living creatures. This being a spiritual world. Now, from there, there's 7 seals. This is kind of crazy. 7 seals, and 4 of those living creatures are the ones that announce the opening of the seals, which is with the riders on the horses. But there's so if you
Do you
look at
remember JT talking about those 4 faces and it having a like astrological meaning as well?
I I think
It's
so.
it's
I think
super
so.
deep. It's super
I
deep, and
think
I'm
so.
not even I'm not even gonna try to tackle it today. But again, I think it's that these things symbolically have oftentimes double or even more meaning to them. And now I
Yes.
the it's also sometimes referred to as a tetramorph. If you look into that, that's an interesting rabbit hole too.
Oh, I know the wording for that is really crazy because in Hebrew it's I don't know how to pronounce it, Shaya, Chayyah. But Adam is referenced once air is breathed into his lungs. He's referenced as a Nesser Shaya as well. So it's just like a being, a spiritual. This is, anyways, way
Yeah,
beyond
and
our.
Yeah, for people listening, I'm talking about this four-headed creature. The lion, the fowl, the bird, the cow, right?
Ox.
Ox,
Yeah.
and the other, what's the other one? Oh,
Lion, ox, man, and bird.
a man and a bird. Yeah, there's some. JT was talking about how there was some sort of an potential astrological connection to that as well, and it was wild. But it's also sometimes called a tetramorph, and that's
Well,
a crazy rabbit hole.
I will say that we are going to, not on purpose, touch base on that because so what I've learned, man, this is a great analogy for me to understand. I'm into engines. I like engines. So if you look at an engine, there's a lot of different pieces to it, but they all have to be there or it does not work. And they all can only do their own part. Camshaft can only open valves. Oil pump can only pump oil. If you replace them, it's not going to work. So it's like the more I got into Revelation, it's like that's how God's put this world together. We're going to talk about the sun and the moon. We're going to talk about stars. And it's like that is how this operates is by those spiritual beings. And in Revelation, when they're taken out, it's part of, the rapture or whatever the case. So it's like, you know what I mean? Taking that piece out of the engine, then absolutely stops working.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah. Okay, all
really
right. Check
crazy.
check this out. I just pulled it up for fun. Um, and this is just what came up. The tetramorph is a symbolic union of four creatures, a man, lion, ox, and eagle, derived from prophetic visions in Ezekiel 1 through 4 through 10. And like we're talking about Revelation 4, 6 through 8, these figures, according to this, can also represent the four evangelists. Matthew as man, Mark as lion, Luke as ox, John as eagle, symbolizing facets of Christ's life and ministry. So there's another take on that. And what I'm learning about the Bible is that it can be that, and it can also be something else. Just like the Hebrew language, those early characters in the beginning of Genesis, they can have multiple different meanings, different words, and they don't contradict. They all just add a new angle to look at
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Ezekiel describes a vision of four living creatures, each having four faces and four wings, and sometimes it's identified as a cherubim in Ezekiel 10. So I just think it's interesting to sprinkle in a little seasoning with that.
hmm Yeah. Well, so that's what's crazy, and that saying it actually helps the point because it's seven seals. The four living creatures are the ones that announce the first four seals, because right, it's only four living creatures, but there's seven seals. So it goes to the point of God has a very specific way He wants everything to work, to down to the smallest detail. Because wouldn't it make logically right if you're going to have seven seals, I need seven living creatures to do it. But that's not the point here. So, so yeah. So, all right. So, and again, I'm bouncing around a little bit on purpose. Revelation 6, 3 through 4. Then the Lamb broke open the second seal, and I heard the second living creature say, "Come." And another horse came out, a red one. Its rider was given the power to bring war on the earth, so that men should kill each other. He was given a large sword. Okay, given the power to bring war on the earth so that men should kill each other. Didn't say the power to go kill everybody, clean up the loose ends for me, and come on back. Tell me how it worked. That's angelic influence. Literally. The men should kill each other. He was given a large sword. Well, so I'll say this. As we go through, there's certain words that are used specific for other things, just like what you said. There can be of multiple meanings. In Revelation, we learn a sword. If you're given a sword, or you have a sword coming from your mouth, it's the word. It's talking about the word. It's not literally you got a mouth hanging out, a sword out of
Yeah.
your mouth, and you're walking around cutting people.
It's
It's
like
the word.
the words are so powerful.
Yes. So so that men should kill each other, he was given a large sword. He was giving a large microphone.
Bingo.
right?
I see
Now,
it.
right? Now let's look at Zechariah 1, 8 through 10 really quick. I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he
Okay.
stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom. And behind him there were red horses, speckled and white. Then I said, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will show you what these be. And the man, this is it. And the man stood among the myrtle trees and answered and said, These are they whom the Lord hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth. So these are spiritual beings. The red horse, the man riding the red horse, not only are these spiritual beings, they've been here the whole time. They've been here the whole time since Zechariah, since before Zechariah, just walking, checking out, reporting back, hey, God, hey, everything's looking good over here in West Quarter. That's nuts, right?
Yeah. Can I just go back to something you
Please,
said a minute ago? It's
please.
about this sword being
Mhm,
potentially being words, right? The power in
mhm,
words. Well, that's
mhm.
this is what the verse says in my version of the Bible. It says another horse, the red horse, its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people would slaughter one another, and he was given a great sword. And it reminds me of the pandemic because that's what they did. It wasn't an actual sword. It was politicians and rulers of the nations with words
Mhm.
setting everything into motion, taking the peace from the people, and the jab and all that. But it starts with words.
Yep.
A
Yeah.
pandemic of the unvaxxed, Joe Biden. They
All that scary talk.
It's all
Yes.
words. That's a different type of sword. That's I never thought about it like that. It's interesting.
These are the patterns and the rhythms that I was talking about. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. They're not, this is a different story. This is a puzzle. They're telling us something bigger here. And that's why, again, I just dove in for a couple of months, was like, I'm in Revelation, and it just kept going. So now let's look at still in chapter 6, 5 through 6. Then the Lamb broke open the third seal, and I heard the third, which I want to point this out. The Lamb's opening it, the living creature's announcing, and then another spiritual being is going and doing it. It's an engine, dude. It's so many moving parts to this world, this realm. We have
Yeah,
we haven't
assembly
even
line,
scratched the surface,
assembly, a hierarchy of beings. That's
right?
in my mind when I see Ephesians 6. That's what I think about because it lists, powers, principalities, rulers, and evil wickedness in high places. To me, that represents different factions that are working together, and there's like a hierarchy there. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
with you. I'm with
Crazy.
you.
So, I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider held a pair of scales in his hand. I heard what sounded like a voice coming from among the four living creatures, which said, A quart of wheat for a day's wages, 3 quarts for barley for a day's wages, but do not damage the olive trees and the vineyards. Couple things. I don't know if we've never talked about this Sean Ryan show. If you Everybody listening, Jeremy Slate, a gentleman named Jeremy Slate, was on Sean Ryan show. Completely unrelated, had nothing to do with the Bible. But when he was talking about the fall of Rome. Dog, it matched up. The way the guy was explaining it, it was eerie. I was in the middle of my research, and I'm like reaching out, texting everybody, like, you gotta watch, listen to this guy's show. And I say that because he got into the point where Rome fell because of immigration and inflation. And that's exactly what that line's talking about is inflation. A quart of
Oh,
wheat, blah. So when I heard
oh.
that dude's, so everybody, if you have it, it was fun. It's like playing Pink Floyd and the Wizard of Oz at the same time. Yeah, I was listening to dude. I was like, dude, you ought to think about,
Yeah, yeah. I like that.
so so there's that.
Hey, and
But
there's got to be, just side note, there's got to be something to the edict or whatever you want to call it that saying do not damage the olive oil or the wine.
well, I talked to my
That
wife about that this morning, and look. it's so arguable point or whatever the case. But all throughout Revelation, look at Jonah, right? Look at the all of the prophetical books were God going to somebody to say, "Hey, tell everybody to knock it off. Tell everybody to knock it off. Please tell everybody to knock it off." The point of the story is God has never once wanted, other than the Amalekites, never wanted anybody to perish. Do not damage the olive trees and the vineyards.
Hmm.
Olive oil and wine is very important from God to us. Those are things, if you read the Bible, those are things that God like literally was like, I'm excited for you guys to like this stuff because it's you're gonna like it. So with everything going down, he's like, don't mess with those two things.
Yeah, it's
Because
it's a anointment. It might be anointing for the oil, and then the wine, it has some symbolic meaning. I don't want to take the Mason's word for it, but the Masons say that the wine is symbolic of a refreshment of some sort.
yes. So you see the kind of the gist of what I'm saying
Yeah, yeah.
is that so all through Revelation, and that's what we're going to be talking about, are little lines that mean different things, and that right there is like God literally being like, "All right, kick them around a little bit, but not that bad, right?" Arguable point, but it's like like, geez, thank you, man. So,
Yeah.
anyways, look at Zechariah 6:1-7. And I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came four chariots out from between two mountains. And the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses, the second chariot, black horses, and the third chariot, white horses, and in the fourth chariot, grizzled and bay horses. You think about the fourth seal, it's death and Hades. Then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said unto me, these are the four spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. This is crazy. The black horses, which are therein, go forth into the north country. The white go forth after them, and the grizzled go forth toward the south country. And they went forth and sought to go that they might walk to and fro through the earth. And he said, get ye hence, walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro throughout the earth, and there was peace. So this goes back to the spiritual beings, and it kind of explains a little bit more of kind of what's going on here with you know how this thing works.
Hey, does it call it death and Hades in Zechariah?
No,
No,
it
that's in
so
Revelation when it
it's
says
in
that. I got you.
Revelation.
I got you.
But you see what I was saying with the
I
rhythm, where
see.
it's one, two, three, and then
Which
four
is
was two.
it's such a that's such an epic verse too in Revelation, the fourth seal. I have it right here. I'll just throw it out there. When he opened up the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, come. I looked and there was a pale green horse. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed with him. Capital D, Death. Like that's an actual entity, perhaps, and Hades as
Uh-huh.
well, capital H,
Uh-huh.
Hades. They followed him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, famine, and pestilence, and by the wild animals of the earth. I don't know if they're going to open up the zoos and let the real lions out or what, but yeah, isn't that's such an epic verse? I had to read it out.
Thank you for reading that because they were given authority over one fourth of the earth to kill by means of war, famine, disease, and wild animals. None of those four are put your hands on them. None of them are go down there and kick them around. All four of those are motivation, right? Because how
Yeah,
would you
yeah.
kill me with a wild beast?
Right. And dude, my version says sword. It sounds like yours says war, but mine says sword. That goes back to what we were just saying, like these power words, like it's verbal warfare.
Yes. Crazy, right?
It's setting things into action. It's setting things into action that can result in violence, but it's
Mhm.
not exactly a real sword um, cutting somebody and
Mhm.
acting out real violence. It's just setting things into motion that will lead to violence.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
interesting.
crucial because when you read it on face value, you're like, wow, that's going to be pretty crazy at the end of the day. Well, we're missing, it's telling us how it's going to be happening by our corrupt government, by our politicians, and all of these people dragging us into these.
This
We're going to
is
talk about Trump and Iran.
this is what they did in 2020. It was sword, if we're going to follow them, a verbal warfare in this form of a sword, I guess, or you get what I'm saying. Sword in the
Hmm.
form of verbal
Hmm.
warfare. It
Hmm.
was famine-ish. I remember when the shelves were empty. Pestilence, that's the virus. And then, wild animals on the earth, you could take that to mean people acting like wild animals and going out and rioting in the streets and burning down courthouses and tearing down statues and, you know, fighting with military police or authority. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's another way to look at this. And what do you think? I don't want to go too far off the path that we're on here, but don't you think that God's people who are going to be on the earth during this time would be protected by some of this as well?
Oh, we get into that.
Okay.
We're
We'll
tiptoeing
wait
on
then.
that.
We'll
Yeah.
wait. We'll wait. Because
Because because that too, that that's literally what we're getting right into is because like you starting to you're starting to notice that there's a lot of spiritual influence, and it's not literal. These things are going to happen. They're telling us it's spiritual, angelic influence, how these things are going to go down, and then it's like, man, this is it's pretty heavy. What's going to be going down? But so that was chapters 4 through 7. Now we're going to jump into 8 through 11. 8 through 11 are the trumpets. The seventh seal, and the trumpets. Now, chapter 9, this is a real fun one for me. It's kind of just a fun one. The locusts.
oh, you know what's interesting? Sorry.
No, no, go for it.
I asked you that question, right? About God protecting his people through all this. And then I realized in chapter 7, if chapter 7 is about the 144,000. So we'll come back to that. I can tell you've got something on that.
Yeah, I
it's
got something.
you're the conductor, man. So I just wanted to throw it in. I'm like, oh man, I'm starting to
Yeah,
answer some of my own questions here with this. Okay, okay.
yeah. But you see, like this, man, when I was getting this, I was like, dude, this is fun. And I was telling people, like, I'm gonna figure this out because
That's what I'm.
I
Yeah,
like
yeah. That's what I'm
it's a
saying. Like, I'm not trying to say that it was the pandemic. I'm trying to say that we all lived through that. We knew what that was like. It could be something much like that.
well, to your point, dude, and not to go down this road, how many, when we look at, the history that has not been lied to us, that we know for a fact is, what we get from our Rothschilds education books. Think about all of the bubonic plague, the black plague. Look at all of those things that have happened over time. Um, we in this niche world, in this conspiracy world, we all think that there's things behind that. Here it is. That's what was happening. Literally was angelic influence. Somebody did something and then boom, 130,000 catch this and that happens, or whatever the case. So you're exactly right.
Angelic influence, good and bad.
Of how
Right?
we started, right? The seven churches or the seven spirits, why weren't they all on top? Because and this is we talked about this last time, and this is what I got from my giant research was that the earth realm, because there's multiple realms, and we're not getting into that. The earth realm is literally free will. I believe that there's a line when you get onto the earth. It is separate from heaven, it's separate from underneath the earth, where it is free will, and I'll put it in Adam's words and not God's words. It's be fruitful and multiply. I gave you that earth, enjoy it. It's for fun. Up here, when you're here with me, you got to follow my rules. So how does all these things happen? Because they're down here and they can happen, right? Because again, if it's a seven spirit of God, how could it do anything wrong? Free will, free will. Plain and simple. That's the only explanation. Is because olive oil and wine, like we talked about, are things God gave us. God is happy being. He wants us to be happy. If you look at it, that's what all this is about. It's like enjoy it. They give it to you, enjoy it. So you get down here, and yeah, you can make bad decisions. Of course you can, because right, I'm going to tell you that there's consequences, and I'm going to tell you what happens. But you can do whatever you want to do when you're down there.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So
So
it's just.
yeah, yeah. So let me back up a second though, and have you clarify that for me. If what I'm
Mhm,
saying
mhm.
is throughout when I say angelic influence, both good and bad, as a whole, that's in the Bible. You've got the dark forces and the good forces.
Mhm.
But in these parts of Revelation that we've gone through, do you think that the bad angels have come into play yet?
So
Or
the way
are
the
these like good angels just kind of doing what they're told and what's been prophesied to happen?
from chapters 1 through 7, we have an example of both. We have the angels over the churches, which are clearly not doing what they're supposed to.
That's
We
right.
have the four living creatures, which are. And then we have the seven spirits. Uh, 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 um, I'm sorry. It's not four. It's the four living creatures and those spirits that are doing what they're supposed to. So you know what I'm saying. So we have, and the way I answer that is because once we get to 12, and I'll talk about it more when we're there. The uh the rhyme of the whole book changes completely.
Yeah,
Is
cool.
what I learned. So it's kind of broke. So yes, we have an example of both good and bad spirits, which is which is wild.
Yeah,
All
it's what,
right.
but it's all through there. I mean, even Deuteronomy 32, you go back and Moses says, "Hey, go ask your elders. They'll tell you." When God apportioned the nations, he put over them principalities, and he allotted for himself Israel, Jacob,
And
Israel. But those other principalities, and I'm still trying to find out when this happened, like the when of it
mhm,
all. But
mhm,
at some point, what happened is they started, these other angels started accepting worship and accepting ritual, and things went
mhm.
bad.
Yeah, a
Yep.
thousand. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, exactly, man. And it's just like you're going through this and you're just pulling out more spiritual beings. Because when you grow up in the church, you hear Revelation is like the end times. You better watch yourself and you better do right. But we're missing so much more that God's telling us of how this whole world works, right? So it's just nuts. So chapter 9, the locusts. And this is another kind of a time stamp, if you will. Um, so while I was in my research, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Jerusalem Bible. My wife found a 72 print Jerusalem Bible. That the significance, it was translated from French, not Hebrew or whatever the case. And it had some tiny little differences that blew me away and have everything to do with what we're talking about. Some really, really significant things. Now, I'll start with in the Locust area. They had a note that it was similar because you know how like the wording and all that stuff goes to where it could be taken as the Parthian Empire. I don't know if you're familiar, and I'm not a huge history buff. So the Parthian Empire. Let's explain the locusts first. Revelation 9, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. Like you just talked about, the 144.
Mm.
So, so this is twofold. So to me, I'm like, okay, all of our answers are in the Bible, technically, right? How do you get to heaven? It's in there. You know how to get to heaven. So why don't we know how to get the mark of our forehead to be safe from the locusts? It would technically say if we were going to face the locusts, arguable point, I feel like it would say specifically how we could get this because it tells us how to get to heaven. It tells us how to avoid, you know, parts of the rapture. Why doesn't it say how to get those marks? I'll get there. So the locusts, Parthian Empire. Um, the description of the locusts, and the shape of the locusts were like horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads, and this is crucial too, it's nuts. We're gonna have some fun as this thing goes. On their heads were diadem crowns, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as teeth of lions, and they had breastplates, and as it were breastplates of iron. The sounds of their wings was as the sound of chariots of many horses running to battle. Now, the Parthian Empire, their clothes was like a V-shaped tunic with a belt, and they had big shoulder flaps on their shirt that would flap as they go. They were from the area, like kind of Persia area-ish, so they had the long curly hair, hair of women. They were a huge, huge army to the point where neither could conquer Rome or the Parthian Empire. They were almost neck to neck battle, which says a lot that Rome couldn't conquer them. Um, the Parthian Empire was famous for the Parthian shot, a tactic of shooting backwards while on horseback at full gallop as heavy cavalry. So what it was a trick. You thought they were running, so you chase them, bam, they catch you with the arrow.
That's epic.
And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men for 5 months. Now, power of the tails, the full description of this Parthian Empire to the extent of the magnitude of their empire. Their clothes from head to toe is almost described. It mentions their colors. I think I have that on here. The colors, I don't have that wrote down, but the colors match because it says that they were the color of red, yellow, red, sulfur, and blue, yellow. Parthian Empire's clothes all match those same colors. Arguable point, yes, but let's get a little supernatural here. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew tongue is Abbadon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So the Locust army has an angel king over them from the pit. Now, in 53 BC and in 40 to 39 BC, Parthian forces captured the whole of the Levant except Tyre from the Romans. Mark Antony led a Roman counterattack, and it still couldn't take them. But they conquered Levant, Canaanite area, up until Tyre. Ezekiel 28. Remember, this is the thing I was telling you about that I couldn't wait. Well, no, one of the other things I want to talk about, because that's what we talked about last time specifically. Remember King of Tyre,
Hmm.
Ezekiel 28? So they were able to conquer up until Tyre. Now, nobody was there, right? None of us actually know. But if I'm right, this force would have had a angelic king over them, which would make sense why they couldn't conquer Rome and they couldn't conquer Tyre, because both of them had angelic kings over them as well.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. That's it. And I'll just for clarification here for the people listening, and everybody at home can make up your own mind on this. We probably differ a little bit on our opinion of this, and that's okay.
Mhm. Sure.
But you, for people listening, I think you're taking this as maybe this had already happened, and
So,
right, and this is like a little season. You got a
so
little
when
season lens on for this one.
exactly, and I don't know if specified that, but when I did my research, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. When I just I was not one way or the other. I'm open to what God shows me, and when I started figuring out the locust thing, that's when I was like, okay, if that's right, then that puts that then. So then that would make it have already happened. So logically, that would put us, if not in the little season, which we'll get there, close to it. See what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something and no one please take it that I'm like Captain Revelation.
Well,
That's not me.
we're still giving good information for people who see it either way. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a little seasoned guy, so I see this as Abaddon, Apollyon will be released from the pit, and beneath him will be these locusts, quote unquote locusts. I see them as like demons and demonesses, or maybe both, or one or the other. You know, they've got. I see these as like entities with like creepy looking demons. Like they've got human faces, they got long hair like a woman. They have scales like I don't know, lizards or something that look like iron breastplates. And when they run, the noise of their wings, maybe they have wings, sounds like a bunch of chariots with horses and the pounding of horses. They have tails like scorpions and stingers, and in their tails is the power to harm people for 5 months. I see this as something that's going to happen, and over them is this angel, fallen angel, Abaddon. But that's just my opinion. You have a little different take on it, and that's cool. I still think people can listen to this and glean a lot of pertinent information from both
Oh
takes.
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And what was I
And
getting
I
ready to
think,
say?
and I
Shoot.
think that the tech for me, I feel like technology will be the mark. I
Well,
lean into that, and I'm not saying that that's for sure what it's going to be, but I lean that way.
sure. Yeah,
But
and that's the
yeah,
fun part of this
it's
for
up for
me. And
interpretation.
again, absolutely. And I love that, you know. So for me, the way I look at it, like in Jeremiah, when God's like, see that pot over there boiling? He's like, yep. What that means is, and he explains the visions. So I kind of like that's kind of the lens that I try. Again, it's just, the way I look at things, not arguing one way or the other, but was like, what if these aren't actual a dragon or locust? What could he be talking about?
Yeah.
And just my lens of like, would that match something else? And just in a crazy descriptive way. Because remember, we said at the beginning, if you're going to put a secret message in the book, and there's a chance that the book will be manipulated, it's got to be crazy secret, like ridiculously. Because I'll say this, and this is my wholehearted opinion, the only way that you can really figure this out is if you want to know God. And evil knows that. And evil knows that the only people that want to know God will actually spend their time in it, and the people that don't won't. So a lot of things will get missed because if you don't dive into it, it's like, man, that was like if you hear people on podcasts like Rogan or whatever, be like, man, Revelation's crazy. I argue it's not. It's just a bunch of metaphors. It's a bunch of figurative talking, and it's really fun mental gymnastics to try to figure it out.
Yeah.
So, you
Well,
know what I mean?
yeah, but either way, we can agree that this is a supernatural fallen angel like entity who is controlling an army, like a dark army. We're both
Oh, that's the
on the
only
same page
way.
with that.
Yes, that's the only way that my all of my stuff will make sense is it is spiritual beings controlling it. Because, right? Because again, like that little thing about the Levant and Tyre and Rome, if you put all that together, again, like I said, those are all spiritual beings over it. It would make sense why, in reality, no one could conquer each other because they're kind of they're on the same team. right? Technically, just doing different things. So it'd be like, all right, don't, go over there. I'm over here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but anyway, so that's the locust. Now, the
Cool. Cool.
144.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is kind of crazy. Revelation 9:4, chapter 9, verse 4. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. If you look at Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4, literally the same. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. So if you look at chapter 9 in Ezekiel, that's the story of Jerusalem at that point is getting punished, and a man with a notepad goes through in a white cloth and goes through and marks everybody that is upset, everybody that's upset of everything that's happening. And then the people that are not upset, those big old men from the east that came with them with weapons of war, killed everybody that was not upset. Because it says, the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations. So, do they see the people there that are marking the foreheads? Because it didn't say go talk to everybody, see how everybody's feeling, let us know. Walk through the men that are responding to the bad stuff here. Those are the
What's
ones that
what?
get marked.
What is that again? What Ezekiel? What?
9:4, chapter 9, verse 4. It The way I look at things, it matches up completely with those 144.
9:4.
4.
Okay. Um, Ezekiel is a very prophetic book as well. So
Ezekiel and Zechariah and Daniel are all referenced in Revelation, and we're going to talk about them. But you want to know Revelation, you got to look at those three books.
go through.
Because Gog
Yeah.
and
So
Magog is 38 there now.
yeah, I just want to see the context here. Yeah. So now the glory of God of Israel had gone up from the cherub on which it rested to the threshold of the house. The Lord called to the man clothed in linen who had the writing case at his side and said to him, Go through the city, through Jerusalem, put a mark on the foreheads of those who sigh and groan over all the abominations that are committed in it. This is marking God's people, the people who are not right. He's asking this man to go and set aside the people who are righteous.
So thank you for saying that. Because Revelation 9:4, they're all virgins.
Pass through the city after him and kill. Your eyes shall not spare. You shall show no pity. Cut down old men, young women, little children, women, but touch no one who has the mark. So I think that this is, to me, in my interpretation of this, is that this is like the roles are reversed. This is like the people with the mark are God's people, and in Revelation, the people with the mark are not God's people.
No, no, because the locusts don't kill anybody with the mark. And then the people with the mark are the ones that are showing frustration.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so again, all this is arguable points, but that's the way it's looking to me was because we would be told how to get those marks. So I don't feel like in that sense those marks are for us. Those are for different people. And it just coincidentally marks it lines right up with 9:4, which is still go down. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, but in Ezekiel 9, it's God, it's the righteous men who get the mark so they won't be killed. And in Revelation, it's the righteous
Don't
people who don't get the mark.
No. In 9, the locusts don't kill the people with the mark.
Yeah, but because they've gotten the mark to signify that they're with the beast.
Well, no, because that's the beast. That later. That's not the mark happens later. That's not nine. The mark actually takes place, if I'm correct, because that's not even. Yeah, the mark is 13. Yeah, the mark is 13.
Yeah, the first beast. Then the dragon took his stand, having 10 horns, 7 heads. On his heads were blasphemous names. Which, okay, so which, all right, we'll just move on from that then, because I'm not. We can move on from that.
Sure. Yeah. So, all right. Now, this is what I kept alluding to. Everything we've talked about thus far um, are a different story than we're going to get from 12 on. I feel like this is a clear separation in the book of how things are going. It can be argued that, well, it even says it, that 1 through 11 is the first death, the rapture, and all that. It says it. That's the first death. It references, who the people that are going to be saved for the, excuse me, second death and all that. So 1 through 11 is like a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy stuff, is what they're telling us is going to happen in time. Um, 12, if you look at 12, I feel like they shift a little bit in the narrative, if you will. It becomes a different book, and it's giving us from the beginning to the end how everything will go. Chapter 12, the woman and the dragon. And this is the other thing that we're probably going to nerd out for a little while because this is what I wanted to bounce off of you and see what your thought is. Then a great and mysterious sight appeared in the sky. There was a woman whose dress was the sun, and who had the moon on her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was soon to give birth, and the pains and suffering of childbirth make her cry out. To your point, certain things can mean multiple things in the Bible. I believe that woman is Eve and Israel, and the it's clear that the child is going to be Jesus. Um, but what's most important, another mysterious sight appeared in the sky. There was a huge red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and a crown on each of his heads. With his tail, he dragged a third of the stars out of the sky and threw them down on the earth. That is clearly talking about, and even in Hebrew, it's dragon nakash is what it's saying. That's clearly saying what happened. That was the fall. It's talking about the fall.
Hold on, hold on, hold on. What? Which dragon? So Revelation 12 verse
12
7,
3.
12:3.
12 3.
When you read through that, and it says the great red dragon, you're saying that there's one of your Hebrew translations is Nakash.
Yes. So
Oh,
so yeah. So in Hebrew, that is dragon nakash.
oh, that's
Um,
interesting. All right, cool.
which we can go. That's a whole nother thing that the
Well, I
what
just
that's
wanted to clarify that for me. We don't have to get
sure,
hung
sure.
up on it, but that's really interesting. That would indicate that maybe this is talking about the dragon from the fall, from Eden.
That's exactly where I was going with that because
Yeah.
that is the description. He's the
Shining
what do they
one.
call Shine? Yes, thank you. And that's what
Shining one.
Nakash can mean when Nakash Hebrew word is a bridge. Nakash can emphasize brilliance or
Sh-
a light with
Yeah.
whatever it's attached to.
Or divination.
Yes. So when it's matched with dragon, that's literally what they're talking about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, my interpretation, but that's our timeline of how it started. And this is how it started was the dragon, the accuser, the fallen one, and he took the third of the angels with him, third of the stars. I mentioned earlier, and we're going to really get into it now with sun and moon and stars and spiritual beings. The stars. Remember we said sword when they when they say sword, they don't mean sword, they mean words. Stars, if you notice in Revelation, they mean angels. If you track it and you go through it, that's what they're alluding to. Um, now, da,
Can I
da,
say that the
yeah,
seven heads, this is interesting because I'm thinking about this Nakash part that you're adding. I want to see that, man. The, that's such an interesting find. But anyway, I think what this could be is some sort of an entity that, or, Satan, that's going to show up around the time of Apollyon. We could debate about that, but I think what it means is the seven heads might actually be seven different entities, like a council of Satan's,
it,
or
it is.
or it could be Satan and six others.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and yes, we're going there.
Because you
We
see
definitely
that
are.
like there's all
Oh,
these I could have went deeper, but I looked into the devil and Lucifer, and I just tried to see who is this because there's different names, Hillel ben Shahar, or in this chapter it's the dragon. In Enoch there's a Gadriel, not Gabriel, a Gadriel,
mhm.
and then there's Asher that I found. There's a couple different names for this, and I think there might be a council of fallen.
I think you're exactly right, and I think that's exactly what it's telling us here. And with a bunch of different, uh, but bunch of different ways. Now, the set now. To get ahead of myself. There was a huge red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and a crown on each of its heads. Something else I learned. If it does not say diadem, it's not a mistranslation, but it's missing, you say mistranslation. It's missing the point. So a diadem crown, you learn in Revelation, is a significant crown. It's a significance, not just royalty, but it's a lesser crown, right? Because God's King of Kings. There would be no representation of anything other than that.
Is it like
And
a
we're seeing it.
coronet?
Well, you know about Coronet, homie, because that's where we're going. That's where
Yeah,
we're going.
because in some of the old legends and myths, and I think there's probably something to this. During the fall, Satan fought with Archangel Michael, and
Oh,
and
oh,
and he had a coronet on, and
yes,
okay. I'll hold on, but it's significant to the story. Yeah.
because that's huge. That exactly what you just said was when this thing kicked off, and I in my mind, I can say to me, I figured it out because of what you just said. 1,000%. The Jerusalem Bible has it says coronet, not crown. And that's when I was like, what's a coronet?
Seriously?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
dog. It's
That's awesome.
nuts. So, and because in 12 and 13, they mentioned coronet, not crown. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why didn't it say crown? Because everything else says diadem. And that's when I learned diadem's a lesser crown because it's significance. Because God, even though you're a spiritual being and you're royalty, you're not more than him, and nothing's ever going to look like that. So the crown is so you can see it, you know it. So when you see a crown on his head, we're missing what they're saying.
Okay, so mine says diadem, and we're going to get to perhaps how that's a coronet, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So, okay, cool. So
Yes.
for people listening, and it's funny because there's a title right above this that says the dragon fights again on Earth.
Yes.
Okay.
So then,
But it says that the dragon took his stand on the sand of the seashore, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea having 10 horns, 7 heads, and on its horns were 10 diadems.
yeah, diadems. And that's all right. Now, then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, who fought back with his angels. So that's telling us that the dragon Nakash had his own angels. They're not stars anymore, right?
Right.
So we know that they're not stars, they're angels. They probably were stars. You know what I mean? Like those shimmering things we see in the sky. It probably is an
I
actual angel.
well, I think that's their part of their celestial allotment is that many of the fallen angels, or before they were even fallen angels, I'm just using that term. It's not even in the Bible, but it represents them after they sort of turned to the dark side. But I think many of them had their own planets or stars, we could call them,
Yeah,
and it's like a source of power for them. Like
exactly.
they're like Tiamat, like the legend of Tiamat. That planet was, it was the planet was called Tiamat. The entity over the planet was called Tiamat, and then there's like dragons associated with it too that are referred to underneath the
Mhm.
moniker of Tiamat as well. But I
Yeah,
my theory is that they are associated with these stars in a metaphysical way, and it's like a power source for them somehow. I don't know.
yeah.
That's just my theory.
1,000% it is related. And I've said it a few times. I keep saying it. I was like, dude, this is a spiritual book. This is like other beings involved in all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm painting a picture here. Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels, a huge dragon was thrown out. That ancient serpent, named the devil or Satan, that deceived the whole world. He was thrown down to earth and all his angels with him. So that's your point. The
What verse
council.
is that, man? Sorry. What
Yeah,
chapter
yeah.
verse is that?
12, uh, 12, 7 through 9, through 10.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
So that establishes that it was Satan. He has a council, he has his own angels. Michael and his angels are the ones that fought him. It's established that clearly.
Yeah, yeah. The great
Now it also,
dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Yeah, yeah. Cool.
right? Now, uh, 10, and I'm gonna skip it a little bit. For the one who stood before our God and accused our brothers day and night has been thrown out of heaven. Accused our brothers. And this is what I wanted to pick your brain about. Now, before we get into the Michael part, backtrack. The woman whose dress was the sun and a crown of 12, and I'm sorry, and had the moon under her feet. Babylon, spiritual beings, um, Baal, Baal, and Ishtar, sun and moon, Apollo, Artemis, Ra, Horus, moon and a sun, all gods, different areas, arguably, which we'll kind of get into a little bit, could be the same people, changing the names to different times. But it's interesting how sometimes the moon uh, spirit is taken as a female, right? You mentioned that. I've listened to a bunch of your shows and you talk about that. For the one who stood before our God and accused our brothers day and night, our brothers. Do you think that that's
Comrades is some version says
do
comrades.
you do you think that that's where the trans stuff comes from? Is because we can argue that God only made male angels from the examples we have in the Bible, right? We don't know everything, but we know what we have in these books. But in other nations take the moon god as a feminine. I wonder if that's where that, because Baphomet and all that stuff. I wonder if that's how that is to be. And I'm kind of curious what you think about that, because you talk a lot about Ishtar and the feminine uh heavenly spirit and whatnot. If God only made what it says in here is just a male, how did that come to be? What do you think about that?
Hmm.
Kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, you think that this is saying that he made male only made males?
I think it I think it can be argued that the
Okay,
only
that's an interpretation. Yeah. Um
yeah,
yeah, okay. So I think it's I had a hard time with this at first. because it was not taught in church, but I do think that they were female Elohim.
Okay.
Um, the other option is that Satan is masquerading as a female entity sometimes. That's easier for some people to digest.
Because I'm not arguing like the male thing. I'm just curious how, you know
But
what I mean? Like
the
how that could.
the trans thing goes back to the temple of Ishtar and Inanna. The priestcraft
There you
were
go.
constantly trying to make themselves more and more androgynous, and they were even chopping off body parts to be both. They were trying to be both. And
Well, that makes
if you go back and you look at there's some hymns to Ishtar that were found, and it was praising Ishtar for making men into women and women into men.
there it is.
It's part
I,
of
I knew you
it's
would. I knew you would say it. I knew you would
it's
know.
part of the worship of that, whatever that is. So for me, I think it's the female Elohim, and for some others, they think it's this is a manifestation of Satan, and Satan has chosen to project himself as in a female form.
Because wouldn't that technically be like the days of Noah when it was like gene manipulation and
Yeah,
experimentation?
it kind of has that thread, and I think that the Babylon in Revelation is referring to the empire of Babylon, but who was the main god, or should I say goddess in Babylon? It was
Well,
it was Ishtar and Nana, and we know that historically. And the whore of Babylon, in some ancient contexts, whore means priestess.
mm,
So I think in Revelation, whore of Babylon means priestess of Babylon, and it's this entity that was worshipped in Babylon. It's the Queen of Heaven. It's in Jeremiah. Jeremiah, it's all through Jeremiah, but specifically Jeremiah 44, where God, through the prophet Jeremiah, tells people, stop worshiping this. Stop worshiping Asherah, the Queen of Heaven.
yeah,
Stop
yeah,
pouring
yeah,
out
yeah, yeah.
libation. Now, why would God tell them to not worship it if it wasn't a real thing? That's my argument.
Exact.
But it's
Well,
so I think it's a she, and she's Babylon, the goddess Babylon, the same goddess Babylon that Jack Parsons was doing rituals to in the desert in 1946. But in my opinion, but there's a book called The Red Goddess by Peter Gray, and he took 7 years and dove into this, the goddess Babylon, and he said it's Ishtar Nana. Historically, we could point to the two, and her name in the Bible is Ashtoreth or
as
Ashereth or the Queen of
see,
Heaven.
and I will take that because what I think that they're saying with that statement, again, being metaphors, whose dress was the sun and who had the moon under her feet. If you look at Genesis 1, 18, 16, I'm sorry. So God made the two larger lights, the sun to rule over the day and the moon to rule over the night. That's very specific. It's
Right.
very, very specific. There's no mistakes in here. So it would just be like to keep, sun to keep everything light, moon for the nighttime. It's to rule over it. So with that, with chapter 12, it's also behind the scenes telling us the sun and the moon are spiritual beings. They are part of this spiritual realm. Um, for me, I would take that.
It's like Ra, the sun god, or Sol. I think he
Yes.
was called Sol sometimes.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then, so we're talking about principalities here,
Hmm.
little G gods.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Egyptians worship Ra, and sometimes it's called Sol. And there's other names for that sun entity. And then in the pre-Islamic world, they had the Mecca moon god Hillel, which is interesting because Isaiah 14 talks about Hillel ben Shahar.
Well, if you think about it, think of it like this. To you, what did you just exactly said? What we know about in the Old Testament was doing the good thing, doing the right thing, having a good God wasn't super popular around the world. It was only popular to the Israelites, right? So how did sun worship and moon worship even start? Because if you look at it, not a lot of people were into worshiping things, and they were just kind of like having fun. How would that happen? How would we even have names of those gods? I think it's arguable that they were, and that they were actually presenting themselves as, because they
They
probably were,
I think they started accepting worship. Yeah. And
right?
that's
The
part of what
sun,
Deuteronomy 32 is talking about.
yes. So this is to, and again, in my
And
interpretation, my disclaimer.
it falls in and plays into the downfall of the nations, and symbolically it can represent the downfall of humans and the fall of man itself.
Yeah, that would explain the obelisks. Like, remember we talked about last time, Cleopatra's Needle and all that stuff, and Washington, D.C., and all that stuff, which we'll kind of
Yeah,
touch
man.
base in a little while.
Oh yeah.
But that would explain how that's so significant. Because again, if no one was really down with worship, how did that even start? How did that become a thing? And how did it
Yeah.
transfer to each nation? How
Yeah.
would so many people, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Worship the sun, unless it was an actual being. All right. So we've got that. Now let's get into Michael and the dragon. This is nuts. Revelation, which I'll point this out real quick before we keep going. Revelation 21:23. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the lamp is its lamp. The lamb is its lamp. So, to our point, at the very end, when it's all said and done, and the New Jerusalem and God's here, you don't even need a sun and the moon. I'm the glory. I'm the light. It's very specific when you're talking about just just a plain old light in the sky. So, all right,
So what has happened here? It's oh, this is under New Jerusalem. Yeah. So this is
exactly.
like this could be a whole nother realm, a whole nother epoch.
Right,
It might be a new
right.
planet. It might be a new planet and
Mhm.
everything. Might maybe, right?
And yeah, and I do believe Revelation. Oh, we're not there yet. That's 13. All right, so
Because it's
coronets.
saying so yeah, like for Earth, for our realm, for where we're at right now, our source of energy and power and light is the sun.
Mhm.
And then whatever the situation is for this realm that they're talking about, God is the source of light. And I just had the verse, and you just read it too. But the city has no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God is its light. Its lamp is the Lamb. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory into it. Its gates will never be shut by day, and there will be no night there. People will bring into it the glory and the honor of the nations. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Just wanted to.
yeah.
That's a cool thing to point out. Yeah, there's no need for a sun anymore. So something has cosmically changed celestially.
That thing that rules. Oh, it doesn't just shine during the day; it rules over the day. It's no longer necessary. I'm here. The glory of your God's here. So it's like, again, wordings. Wordings are everything in these books. These are the pattern and the rhymes that got me interested. I'm like, well, that's a really wild way to say that.
Hmm.
It even, and not to talk about water again, but it even says in the New Jerusalem, then there will be no more sea. And it has an exclamation mark. It's like, what's wrong with water? There's something up with water. But that's a whole nother show and all that stuff. All right. Now, coronets, Michael, and the dragons. It mentions the heads of the dragon are wearing coronets. In 12 and 13, it mentions coronets. Everywhere else is diadems. Coron, yeah, I will do this first because this is better. Um, Revelation 13. Then I saw a monster coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads. Each of the 10 horns was wearing a coronet, and blasphemous names were written on the heads. Uh, 13:4. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who was able to make war with him? So that sentence right there, it's nuts. Michael's name means who is like my God. Literally what his name means. Michael, as we see in 12, is the angel, and his angels are the ones that fought the dragon and his angels and kicked him out of heaven. So, known thing. 12 through 22 is a timeline from the beginning to the end. It's establishing Genesis 6 with Michael and all that. But then we see in 13, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Michael's name means who is like my God. That those two sentences, no one said who is like unto the beast. That's a play on words. Who is like unto the beast? Who is like my God? It's confirming right there that Michael's the one that kicked them out, and this is when the great deception started. Because how would they not know that he was kicked down and who was not like the beast? How would they not know? Because it was the great deception. Now, why do I think that that's when the great deception started? Coronet is it comes from British tradition, and that's when aristocracy, that's a hard word to say, started, right? That's when
Aristocracy, yeah, it goes back to this coronet. Yeah, that's then in the legend when Archangel Michael fought with Satan, he took a swing at the coronet and knocked off a gem. And it mainly people calls it lapis lazuli, not lazuli. Some people will be familiar with lapis lazuli. In the legend, it's something else. It's called lapis lazuli. It's like dark green or dark blue, and
sure.
that some legends suggest that Cain, the first humans were alive when this happened. Cain was watching from below,
Mhm.
and parts of this stone got shattered and fell to earth, and one of them hit Cain on the forehead,
And that's the
and
mark.
it's symbolic of the mark of Cain, symbolizes the line of Cain carrying the mark of the dragon being the one wearing the coronet, who Archangel Michael swung at. Um, it's like a coronet headpiece that kind of like a ephod. Well,
No, no,
you know
no.
the gems had some sort of power and significance to them.
Well, that told me when I found coronet, that told me everything. Because a coronet, again, is British tradition. British. That's when aristocracy. That's when it all started.
Yeah, well,
Because
that's
think,
okay. That's one thing. That's what I meant to tell you is that to this day, it's said that they still have a piece of this stone that fell from Satan's headpiece, and they use it when they coronate rulers.
that
There was a weird stone in a box when they coronated Queen Elizabeth back in the 40s or 50s, and some people think it's that. This bloodline has held on to that stone that fell from Satan's headpiece, coronet, and they've had it this whole time. Yeah.
I would take that to logistically how it pans out, but I would take that to match exactly what I'm saying in this point with the coronet. Because if you think about it, because aristocracy is uh it it's
It's also
it's
called, sorry, one more thing. It's also called the Stone of Destiny. Okay.
okay. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah,
some
yeah.
people
I've heard of
call it.
that.
And it's said that it was brought to, you think of modern royalty and aristocracy, we're talking about like Europe or like England and those lands, the UK, right? It said that the Stone of Destiny was brought to that region by an Egyptian princess named Scotia, who
Mm.
Scotland is named after.
Well,
She was a bloodline from Egypt who had this stone. They've been carrying it along the whole time.
what you just said, take this with that. And cornets display specific designs based on rank, such as the strawberry leaves for dukes or silver balls for marquises, the gems and all that. Think of it like this. Where did Duke, Ellington, Marquise, where did earls, where did all of those terms come from? They had to be started at some point because all of those, if you track all of those meanings, they are, if they're not heirs, excuse me, it's either in like, excuse me, it's either given or given through war, like a battle or some kind of, it's mock um royalty, if you will, because I'm painting a picture here to explain the coronet thing. These are made up terms, if you will. They weren't there, and then they were there all of a sudden, right? God established the kingship. Now, to your point with the stones falling over or keeping through lines,
It's like a relic of the bloodline, is what I'm suggesting.
and blasphemous names were written on the heads, right? Each of the 10 horns was wearing a coronet. We established what that is and the significance, and had blasphemous names on the heads. Those are the ranks. It's telling us the ranks. So that with who is like unto the beast, who was able to make war, it's telling us, I take it as the fall and how did the great deception start? By these bloodlines, by the heraldry and the people that are going to be continuing these stories. I feel like it's telling us not only how it happened, but how the great deception started and how, you know what I mean, how they use the deception behind royalty. Because if you think about it, that's the whole bloodline tracking, just like you just said, is based on that. And they're not doing it just for fun, right? They're doing it for ill intent to take over or whatever the case. So I feel like right there in 13, that's telling us, timestamp what happened and how it happened. All right.
Which verse is it again? Which verse?
That
13?
is, yeah, 13, really 1 through 4. Because 4 is
Dragon.
yeah, 1 was when they talk about the cornet again, and then 4 is the play on Michael's name.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So,
The blasphemous names thing is interesting. Uh Recently I've taken that to mean a counterfeit. They're trying to
well,
be like the Most High and try to counterfeit what the Most High does. And that's why with in Gnosticism you see this other Trinity. It's got Sophia involved, and I think that that's what the blasphemy is when they take terms meant to describe the Most High or names of the Most High and apply it to themselves and say that
sure,
they're the Holy Spirit, right? It's like, oh no, it's actually Sophia. It's Holy Spirit, Sophia.
which
That
could be
that
argued.
for me, I think that's how I make sense out of this word blasphemy, and that's mentioned throughout this. But that's a new sort of a revelation that I've had, and that's kind of where I'm at with it currently. It does. I don't know if that makes sense, but we've got
Oh yeah,
for
absolutely.
Christians, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. That's
Mhm.
the Holy Trinity. But there's also the mystery Gnostic version of that, which says, oh no, the Holy Spirit's this female, divine, female Sophia thing. And I
Mhm.
think that might be because that's all through the occult, all through the ages, where they take concepts of the God, the
Mhm.
great God, and then they try to, counterfeit it. And I
Yeah.
just feel like that's got something to do with blasphemy, but that's just my own little opinion there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because like for me, if you look at uh Esau's line, when they're just going through genealogy and describing who comes from Esau, you notice that they're dukes. The Amalekites are dukes. Um, and it's like that's the first time that any royalty is mentioned in any fashion other than God. It's kind of like, well, why? How? Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of got my wheels spinning with the blasphemous names and the coronet, is because like all of that had to start somewhere. And if you look at the point behind this, it shouldn't have. None of it's good. You know what I mean? Because like
Mhm.
God's like, you don't need a king. Technically, he appointed all the kings. So why are we're starting our own heraldry? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In our own
Oh
terms.
yeah. Well, that's in the names. That's like Scotia. That's what Scotland was named after. Then you've
Hmm.
got Brutus, Britain. Britain was named after this guy Brutus, who's comes from Greece originally, said to be from the line of Aphrodite. These are like sons of the little G's.
Hmm.
Aphrodite is like the Greek Inanna Ishtar. And this guy Brutus really lived and started Britain. His father was Aeneas, son of Aphrodite. So he's in Aphrodite's lineage. And Brutus, according to legend, actually killed when he went to Britain. He had to clear the land. There was apparently giants there, and he had to kill off a giant named Gog Magog.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I actually read about that like 2 days ago. That whole, yeah, which is
And which is
nuts.
wild because that would probably be, if that was a real thing, we're talking about a Nephilim who has taken the name Gog Magog, which has its own
Exactly.
sort of wild, eschatological end time sort of a tilt to it. And then, if we're to believe that this bloodline actually has this stone of destiny, you look at people like Queen Elizabeth, who was coronated on top of this weird box with a weird stone in it, and then she was also initiated into the Druids, the Order of the Druids.
Did you see the video when
And
she died?
yeah, yeah, let me circle back to that. The Druids were Scythians, by the way, and the Scythians started the Order of the Dragon, which it's all in the name.
Um,
They're telling you, yeah, we worship the dragon. The dragon. We just read it. Revelation, it says the dragon. Scythians start the order of the dragon. Queen Elizabeth is in one of their separate orders called the Order of the Druids. It's still around to this day. It's a mystery school. They claim lineage back to the Tuatha De Danann. I think that the full title is like Order of the Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And
mm,
Queen Elizabeth was initiated and made an Ovate, which is like a seer. And
mm.
the House of Windsor to this day they still try to suppress all this. There's footage of her being initiated as a druid. They try to suppress the footage.
Yeah, I've
So,
seen that.
it's still going on today. It's just not talked about. And yeah, I've seen that footage of her. If it's the footage I think you're referencing, it was a guy who was um talking about the event like it was a live event, and there's some weird words,
It was like
weird voices that come into the break into the recording.
they said, I don't think she's gonna come back this time.
Okay.
And it was like, so today we've got da 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 da. Like they didn't
Yeah.
realize it was an open mic, and it's like, what?
Yeah.
What,
One
what
of
else could you mean?
I heard some of that, and I want to say in the clip I heard part of it said she's not dead, she's trapped or something like
Yeah,
that as well.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah.
pretty
It was,
crazy.
and it's like, all right, what? Give me another meaning, because what else would you have meant, homie? Like,
Yeah.
so. All right. So I feel like we've painted a good picture now of it's a lot of spiritual beings, a lot of spiritual entities, and how this realm works and how Revelation works. Now we're going to start talking about Babylon a little bit because we're getting towards the end. Why is Babylon mentioned in Revelation? Like we talked about earlier, it fell earlier in the book. Why is it so significant in Revelation? Now, in Daniel, we're shown two visions that we're going to talk about. One, the multiple animals that we learn are representation of empires, right? And we see it's different ones. The first was a lion, the second like a bear, to another like a leopard. Behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, strong and exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. Through Daniel, we learn iron is symbolizes Rome, and again, those animals represented separate empires. Nebuchadnezzar's statue. I think that we missed something on it. You know how the head is gold, and then all the way down to the feet are clay and iron,
Hmm.
but it is one statue. We see seven spirits are seven individual spirits. We see four living creatures, individuals. This statue is one statue. I feel like what they're actually telling us, based on everything now and what we're going to continue going with, what they're telling us is it was one empire. It just changed names and changed times. It was the same thing the whole time. It started gold, signifying like God, kind of cleanliness and holiness.
Hmm.
I think what they're saying is, and I'm gonna explain it next, is Babylon is the original Nephilim fallen angel kingdom. When they came down, as we saw, Michael kicked them out, and the dragon Nakash had his angels, and they were banished to earth. I think that that's what this Bible in different places is telling us is they established their rule, which
Hmm.
was Babylon. And again, Babylon didn't fall necessarily, it just changed names and times. Therefore, it's still here, right?
Hmm.
Now, in 13,
Are we in
uh,
Daniel? Are we in Daniel right now, by the way?
no, no, no.
You were just there for a second there, right?
Well, I was, yeah, so the only thing I was describing Nebuchadnezzar. The only thing I'm taking from Daniel right now, for example, is Daniel 7 with the four great beasts, because they're separate beasts. Now, in Revelation 13:2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and his great authority. The beast is combined. So I feel like what that's also backing the point is that those empires were one empire, just changing times and colors. And in Revelation 13:2, that beast has the teeth of iron, the mouth of Rome, because sword, teeth is signifying uh, speech and mouth. So I think that what they're telling us again, 12 is how it happened, and 13 touches base on the how the Great Deception started, and it's telling us it started through Babylon and through these kingdoms. Now, really quick,
Yeah,
in
Daniel. Well, real quick though, Daniel 2:42, because I think you mentioned this verse. It talks about uh, iron mixing with clay, right? Daniel, it
the
says
statue, yes,
the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle, as you saw the iron mixed with clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage. And the Hebrew for that's interesting. I've read that many times, the Hebrew, trying to figure it out, and it's talking about they will mingle with men, but not of men. Like man is mixing with something that's not human.
thank you,
And I think
thank you.
so. And from there, everybody can have their different interpretations. Mine is that possibly that's where you see this technology aspect again, where it's man transhumanism,
Yes,
man mixing with something not of man. It says that uh, men will mix with seed not of their own.
yes,
So
because
it could be a Nephilim thing, or it could be like a transhuman Nephilim thing.
yes, yes, thank you. Because, and that's been always my thought too. So just to establish, I feel like they're saying the statue's one kingdom. You
Yeah.
feel me?
Hmm. Hmm.
But the clay and the iron. So dirt is us, right? Anytime earth is humans, clay is dirt and water, a mixture.
Okay.
What they're saying is that mixture, that clay and that iron were mixed, but it didn't stick.
Hmm.
So to your exact point, that's exactly what I think they're saying. Is it starts with the Nephilim, it starts with the fallen. That's why it's bronze at the top, or gold. I'm sorry, gold at the top. And then when you get down to the significance, the symbolism of that statue, it's talking about us and we're gonna. So let me say this. I forgot to say this. Rome in Revelation is a split kingdom. I'm not saying this right. I'm gonna get it backwards. But we don't know it as, yeah, yeah. But we don't know it as a split kingdom. We know Rome is Rome. It's a great empire. We're going to get into that. But because it has to do with Babylon. Genesis
There
10.
was there was also the East-West, Eastern Roman Empire and Western Roman Empire.
Well,
That might not be
I'll
it. That might not play into this at all. I'm just saying.
no, 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 because you're exactly right, and like Byzantine and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. My point is, I don't believe any of that crap that they're telling us. I think they're lying about our history, and I think the answer is actually in these books.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
um,
it was the church was the Western Roman Empire, and that was the Dark Ages.
well, it'll make sense here in a minute, but because you're exactly
Well,
right, and I'm
they are lying about it, but it's not
yeah,
necessarily this Anthony Flamenco
no,
missing timeline thing. I think that the church hid the fact that they oppressed Europe so hard it went into a dark ages. But meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire under Constantine was flourishing, and they tried to wipe that off the face of the planet, that evidence, and
sure,
called it, they came up with the term Byzantine and everything, like the
yeah,
Byzantine
yeah, yeah,
Empire.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that it's interesting that the church kind of hid that. But go ahead. I'm
Oh
sorry.
yeah. All right, so Genesis 10 at the in the beginning of his kingdom was uh Babel, and Eric and Akkad and Chaldea in the land of Shinar. And they're talking about Nimrod. That's the first time Shinar is mentioned. Babylon has not been mentioned yet. Babel is, but we know Babel and Babylon are different. We know
Well,
that.
Babylon is the land of Shinar. It was built there, established there.
So Genesis 14, when they're talking about there's two battles of five giant kings. The Genesis 14 is the first one. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar. Because what you just said, in the Orthodox Jewish version, there's a quotation right there by a king of Babel, a king of Shinar, i.e., Babylon. So, in terms of continuity, the first time Babylon is mentioned in the Bible is in reference to Shinar, just like you said. So, Shinar was this land. Babylon was in Shinar because Shinar, if you look at the old maps, it's just huge area. And Nimrod's lands were in. So it was just like smaller areas. Now, so they're establishing that Babylon is Shinar. The first time Babylon itself is mentioned is Joshua 7:21. And how it's mentioned is everything. When I saw among the spoils of a goodly Babylonish garment and 200 shekels of silver in a wedge. Do you remember Joshua? They got in there and it was giant warfare with the Canaanites. And the spoils, a goodly Babylonish garment. Goodly is a word in the Bible describe great size or bigger than average. Um, King Saul was a goodly man. He was shoulders to head taller than everyone in the land. David had a son with a woman from the land of Hebron, which is Canaanite territory, and he was a goodly man. So the goodly word is used to describe very large things. So the first time Babylon is mentioned, it's mentioned with a very large garment. Where did the giants come from? The Nephilim, the fallen angels. I believe Babylon was there when they got here, and that's what they established as land. That was their kingdom. Who and what? That's not what I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying. Was that's how it started after the so 12 Revelation 12. We get told how the Great Deception starts, right? The Michael coronet, blasphemous names, and then we have 13 establishing Babylon. The land. These
Yeah,
examples of
it's all Babylon. The foundation of Babylon is all intertwined with this whole story until the end, until Revelation. And yeah, it's started by Nimrod, It's the line of Ham after the flood. That's what produces Nimrod. And also in that family was Canaan, the Canaanites, the giants.
Mhm.
And then you got Zechariah 5, which is an interesting verse that talks about the beginning, a potential origin story for Babylon, and it's referencing what I believe to be this female Elohim again too.
Mhm.
So there's that too. That's an interesting verse, but I don't want to hold you back, so I'll let you keep going.
Sure. And we're wrapping up here now too. So, all right. So where we are, spiritual beings everywhere. That's how this entire world operates is by separate spiritual beings beyond watchers, beyond all that stuff that we know. There's way more that only have certain tasks. We also see, like we talked earlier in Zechariah, that a lot of these spiritual beings have been here the whole time, just cruising around
Yeah.
checking everything out, reporting back.
Yep. I gotta read this because I think you'll find it interesting. It's
Mhm.
just going along with what you're saying anyway. It's Zechariah 5, and starting in verse 7, it says, this is Zechariah. He's having a prophetic vision, and he's with an angel, essentially. And he's then a leaden then the angel who talked with me came forward and said to me, "Look up and see what is that is coming out." I said, "What is it?" He said, "This is a basket." And he said, "This is the iniquity in all the land." Then a leaden cover was lifted. There was a woman sitting in the basket. And he said, "This is wickedness." And he thrust her back in the basket and pressed a lead weight down on its mouth to close it. Then I looked up and saw two angels. They had wind in their wings. They had wings of a stork. They took the basket, lifted it up back between earth and sky. And I said to the angel, "Where are they taking the basket?" And he said to me, "To the land of Shinar, to build a house for it. And when this is prepared, they will set the basket down there on its base." So there's a female in a basket. Zachariah sees it and says, "What is that?" And the angel says, "That's wickedness." And he closes the basket, traps it in there. Two angels come down. They pick up the basket to set it down in the land of Shinar to build a house for it. And I think that that's referencing the goddess Babylon, the whore of Babylon.
Yeah,
That's what I think. And I think it
it's
goes, but
crazy.
I do think it goes along with what you're saying though,
Mhm.
that these entities have been involved the whole time.
Whole time, and it just again just to keep saying it, like it blew me away once I started to kind of get the logistics of Revelation. Because how's this whole thing going to work? When you really get into it, there's a lot of moving pieces to this thing. All right.
No
So
doubt.
Babylon, Babylon, Babylon. Why is Babylon on there? We talked about the statue. I believe that it never went away. It's always been the same thing. We mentioned the gods, the different sun and the moon god, and different names, and different areas, and different times, all that kind of stuff. Rome, Rome being split. We don't know it as split, like what I was talking about. Revelation 16, 19. And the great city was divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Great city was split and divided into three parts. Now, it's been many people smarter than me have broke this down to where uh, London, the banking, Rome, the religion, the Vatican, and then we, unfortunately, are the armory of the former Babylon Empire, the former Nephilim Empire. I believe that that's what Revelation 16 is referencing. Is that's when going with the Great Deception is that's how it continued. Because think about it, when you're going through Revelation, they're getting their penance, they're getting punished. How do you keep this evil going? You split the kingdom. You split it up. You conquer the world. This goes what we were talking about, how a lot of these cities were already here. Rome, I think we can argue Rome. conquered more than just Rome. They weren't so huge that they didn't have no ships and they didn't check the world out. They did. And JT, thank you, JT, he opened my eyes to that. We were talking about the he talks about the 49ers and how Hollywood is manipulating us to believe that these old westerns are how the world was actually conquered. No. World was conquered by these beings, and that's the deception is being us, our hidden history, basically, right? So that's 16, and that kind of gives us an extra, and that's what I was saying about the split of Rome is like we have the textbook version, but what's the spiritual version? What I believe is right there. It's telling us that that's how it's split.
Okay,
Um,
yeah. So
and,
it's Revelation 16, verse 19. The great city was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. God remembered great Babylon and gave her again, just throwing that out there, gave
mhm.
her a wine cup of fury of his wrath, and every nation fled, and no mountains were to be found. So, yeah, interesting.
Crazy,
And
right?
yeah, the great whore. The next chapter is the great whore and the beast. So again, I think that's this goddess Babylon figure. But
Mhm.
that's go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to read that
So
verse again.
no, absolutely. And this will be for me wrapping it up. Revelation 18. All right, so the picture that I've tried to paint, again, the spiritual beings, but also Babylon, Rome, us, our life, what's going on, how does this relate? I feel like the locusts can be a timestamp. And if that is right, then that would technically put us, the way that the world looks and the way things are going, it would seem that we are in the little season. I'm not an advocate for that. And if God tells me tonight you're wrong, I'm gonna let you know I'm wrong. But I believe that that's what he's been showing me. So that's kind of what I believe. It's a heavy thing to believe. And I'm not the one, that's a heavy thing to argue, but just the way I look at it. Now, Revelation 18, the Jerusalem Bible, along with Coronet, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, excuse me, excuse me, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. Unclean and hateful bird. That stood out to me. And for like 2 days, I kind of reflected on that because that doesn't make any sense. Birds aren't bad, right? Give me
It's
another
a
example in the
it's
Bible where
predatory. It's a predatory bird, perhaps.
is is that what they're saying?
Yeah, I
Because
think
the
so.
next
Because I
line,
think
well,
yeah, because this
hold
is
on.
it parallels Isaiah 34.
Well, think of it like this. The next line, pay her back. Well, 6, 18:6. Pay her back in her own coin. Yes. Pay her back double for all that she has done. What's on the other side of our quarter?
And
A
the
bird,
eagle,
the eagle. If
predatory
you look
bird.
at, right, if you look at Apollo, Ra, I think, and not Baal, but a lot of those sun gods, they're they're represented by the eagle or a bird. A lot of those guys, and if you look at Freemasonry, look at our government, the birds everywhere, our national birds, the eagle. I think that this is backing the point that Babylon didn't fall. It continued, and it continued onto like where we are. And I think that that's literally what they're saying. It's not talking about what the bird has nothing to do with the bird. It's just like everything else. It's a play on words to tell us who it is by giving us symbols of them, right? The coin, because not every translation mentions the coin. A lot of them say just pay back by your dues or whatever it says. specifically with coin. What does that got to? That's a very specific thing to be paid back by your own coin. Has nothing
Well,
to do with the coin.
well,
It's what it's. Go ahead.
maybe, perhaps, but I mean, the earliest coins were produced by the Lydians. They used a mineral called electrum to make coinage. It got quickly picked up by Turks in the Mediterranean and the Eastern Greeks. On one side of the coin was the goddess, and on the other side of the coin was the bird.
Thank you for saying that, because that's exactly what we've been saying this whole time. Who would have who would have thought to do that? Who would have come up with this? It was angelic influence to to make your own coin. Because isn't that technically idolatry? Technically. So what you just said, I think the way I look at it is what they're saying here
Yeah, that's why it
is
says the root of money is the root of all evil. It ties in with the goddesses being on the coins and
yes.
her being associated with the fowls because it's the owl. It's associated with Lilith. It's also associated with Minerva and Athena. And that's exactly what you saw on these coins, earliest
And
coins.
yes, and why would they? Because that cage of every unclean and hateful bird doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't make sense with the rest of that sentence, right? The habitation of devils.
It mirrors the fall of Basra in Isaiah 34. I can show you that if you want.
No, no, yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with 34 because
Well, it's
34:14,
birds. It's birds. It's Lilith. It's the
but
habitation of Lilith and then the owls and the fowls.
exactly, exactly. So why would if they
It's
if
a city fallen into ruin, just like Babylon will be. So
but
it's
you see what I'm
showing
saying?
you.
Like no, no, you because I'm going with
It's
what you're
showing you
saying. Like
twice. It's showing you twice. It's
because
showing
like
you
if
because it's Isaiah. It's prophetic. So it's showing
yeah,
you in
yeah.
Isaiah 34, and it's even down to the female Elohim, which I know people have a hard time with, but still she's in there, so I can't overlook it. So Isaiah 34 is this. It's Edom. God like
Mhm.
smashes this town off the face of the earth, says it's always going to be a ruin. It's a ruin to this day. You can look it up online. It's just a bunch of blocks out there, and it's the habitation of Lilith and fowls. So
Well,
the
like
demoness and these predatory birds.
well, think of it like because what I'm saying is because to your point, Lilith, say she's she's a spiritual being, right? She's an entity. What does the bird have to do with her? Wouldn't if she because the sun like we've established that
Well, so
these
it, to the old to the ancients, like to the Semitic Phoenicians, Astarte was often shown in exotic dance surrounded by fowls. So it's on the coins, it's in the rituals, it's
Mhm.
in Astara. Even later in the Norse tradition, she's got the birds around her. There's an association with these certain type of entities and birds. Oftentimes they're birds of prey, like owls or eagles.
Mhm.
And I think that's why our quarter is looks the way it does. It used to be a bird on one side and a goddess on the other. Now it's a bird on one side and like George Washington on the other. They
and
switched
that's
it
what
up a little bit.
I find interesting is because if I wanted to be worshipped, you're gonna get a picture of me. You don't need nothing else. You're gonna worship me because I'm Adam. I don't there's nothing else. There's gonna be no need to represent. Just you got my picture. So with them taking those representations of birds and whatever the case of all that stuff, I feel like that's what, again, in my opinion, is what they're hinting at with that, is to tell us, yeah, yeah, it's birds, but who? The people that are using the bird as their symbol. You know what I mean? Because again, if this is a puzzle, how do you get the message out without just putting it out there? So that's kind of the way I look at that. It's all good, it's no big deal. But then in Revelation, oh man, did I not write that down?
I'll read this real quick because people often push back about this, and it's just the fact that Lilith is. Some people tell me, "Oh, Lilith's not in the Bible." Well, it's right here.
Oh, it
It's
is
in my
absolutely.
Bible. Yeah, it's in the my New Revised Standard Version, Isaiah 34. verse
14.
14. Yeah, there too Lilith shall repose and find a place to
Mm,
rest. There shall the owl nest and lay hatch and brood in its shadow. There too shall the buzzards gather. Right.
mhm.
So, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Isaiah, that's
you know,
it's I think it's a prophetic chapter. I think it directly relates to this Revelation 18. It's just too similar because you got two cities that were evil and they're laid to ruin, and there's all these similar parallels with the birds and even with the female Elohim, in my opinion.
which I just
It's
found what I
interesting.
was looking for. Yeah, no, no,
Good,
I
good,
just
good,
found what
good.
I was looking for too.
Cool, man.
Let me look at it. 8:13. Oh, God bless. Revelation 8:13, because it goes with the eagle. I didn't write it down. Yeah, Revelation 8:13. Then I looked and I heard an eagle that was flying high in the air say in a loud voice, "Oh horror, horror, how horrible it will be for all who live on earth when the sound comes from the trumpets that the other three angels must blow." Certain translations put that as angel, not eagle. So it's like, is that why they chose the eagle? Because certain angels, we don't realize that certain angels can take the form of animals. So then they were worshiping an eagle. Well, we see them as worshiping an eagle, but in reality, it actually was an angel that could take the form of an animal, right? So it's kind of
Like a
like,
cherubim, like we're back at that tetramorph,
yes.
right?
So
It's got the four heads, one of an eagle, one of
and
a
that's
bird.
why I take that hateful bird line, because all it's telling us is all them bad guys. They're the ones that are, who I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Um,
Oh
it
my
didn't come to
gosh,
find
dude.
out that some of them can take animal characters.
This
So
is this is so crazy, dude. I just saw this. It just caught my eye. Uh, where it says in Revelation 18, which is where we're still at, right? Isn't
mhm,
that
mhm.
okay? So yeah, where there we go. It says, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. It has become a dwelling place of demons, a haunt of every foul spirit, a haunt of every foul bird, and a haunt of every foul and hateful beast, for all the nations have drunk on the wine of her wrath and fornication." And is Isaiah 34, it's like, where does it say that? It's there shall it be called no kingdom there, like a no man's land, and all its princes shall be nothing. Thorns shall grow over its strongholds, nettles and thistles in its fortresses. It shall be the haunt of jackals, an abode for ostriches. Wildcats, hyenas, goat demons shall call to each other. There too Lilith shall find a place to repose. There shall the owl's nest lay in. You see what I'm saying with these
Mhm.
similarities?
Well, which is crazy is if that ties together, that's a timestamp too, because the little season is in chapter 20. So, you know what I mean? Like all these events are kind of like I didn't jump into this trying to find that. I just kind of feel like that's kind of what these looking at. And then I'll end my part with what we started with. Revelation 17, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been drunk with the wine of her fornication. I believe that that's what's telling us is those kings, the spiritual beings, committed fornication, and that fall is what messed up the rest of the world. Drunk with the wine of her fornication. I feel like Revelation is telling us that, and it's kind of where we are.
Mm.
Up to, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm saying that I love researching the Bible and I love talking about really crazy things.
Yeah, well, we could check all those boxes off today, man. It's interesting, man. It's been fun going through all this with you. I love finding parallels too between chapters and verses and different books of the Bible, and just putting those together and seeing, because it does, especially in these prophetic books. They talk, it's almost like they tell the same story a different way sometimes with different details, and it doesn't contradict. It's just different, new
Dude,
angles.
if we didn't talk about it because it's just too much, but like Gog and Magog,
Mm,
Ezekiel 38 and 39 is literally God's telling Ezekiel what's going to happen. That final battle of chapter 20, Revelation 20, the final battle with Gog and Magog is in 38 and 39. If you read it and really, really reflect on it, he's telling them how he's going to use them,
mm.
how it's going to end. It's really crazy. To your point, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah, yeah.
wild that these other
Ezekiel,
books,
which Ezekiel is it, bro? Sorry,
30
30.
chapter 38 and 39.
Oh, interesting. Invasion of Gog, judgment on Gog. There we go. Yeah, it's here. It has something to do with it.
Which
All right,
is
man. Yeah, what do you
crazy
think
too.
about that?
I think that Gog is the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. What we've been talking about, spiritual beings, prince is not a prince. It's not like we think of a prince. I think it is a spiritual being. So Gog would have been a spiritual prince, protector, whatever it is, whatever it was used for those guys, to the extent that Gog is going to be used to manipulate. Because it says it, Persia, it says all the lands, but it's crazy because it's literally Iran, Russia, and Turkey, and like the little surrounding areas. But it's basically saying that Gog, the spiritual being, is going to manipulate that war. So if you read 38 and 39, that's what happens. It's telling them, I'm going to use you for this. You're going to do this. Once you get in there and do this, I'm going to do this to you because of what you did. And it's literally the battle. So that is what I think is
Yeah, I think it's interesting that one of these chief princes' name is Tubal too, because that harkens back to the line of Cain.
yes it
It
does.
goes back to
Yes it does.
this bloodline, this potentially this dragon core, and it's almost like this has always been the case. The royals and rulers of this world have always been on that dark side of things. Like all the presidents are related,
And
John
why?
Lackland, right? John Lackland, King
Yes,
of England. They're
dude.
all the presidents except for like one are related to this guy who's he's a bloodline king.
Now, could what you just said, could that be argued as coincidence? No.
I don't think so.
No. No.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
so.
right?
It's crazy because it's George Washington and Obama are related, and they have their Obama's grandmother has carried the same name as George Washington's grandma. It's like a maternal line.
And I thought about something today, not to get political, but it has to do with what you're saying. So I saw a graph the other day, and it was showing over time what's gotten more expensive and what's got cheaper. What's gotten cheaper are the stuff that's bad for us: cell phones, television, technology. What's gotten more expensive? Housing, food, gas. From when I was a kid to before I was even born to now, we've had presidents. We've had different presidents. We've had Republicans. We've had Democrats. We've had people come in and say, hey, enough with the crap. I'm going to come in and change things. But if you look at that graph, nothing has changed. It's always been the same thing. No matter who's in, things get more expensive. Nothing changes. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
All of these beings, like you just said, are related. They're all spiritual beings, kings and princes. They're spiritual beings appointed by God. Why are they doing bad stuff? We already talked about that. Because this realm is free will. When you're down here, you can technically kind of do whatever you want. Angels come and go. We see that in multiple books in the Bible. They come down here. Why is the sun being worshipped? Why was the moon being worshipped? Because they were spiritual beings and they came down and just said, and then started that. So, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's like, so how did all this stuff happen? That's how. These bad angels, these spiritual beings behind the scenes, manipulating us, given a large sword, and to cause men to kill themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Why too are they? You get into some of these emails, these Clinton emails, and they're looking for the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, one of
Mm-hmm.
the old priest kings, the old,
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me, seed of Satan rulers.
Have you gone down that rabbit hole? That email is for the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh and the four buried Nephilim. So to me, there's two things to take from that. Because you know how the argument is was Gilgamesh Nimrod, you know?
Right. Hmm.
So in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Nephilim is never mentioned, and in the Bible, Gilgamesh is never mentioned. So there's no crossing there. But that email from people that are possibly spiritual beings that know more than we do behind the scenes, we're looking for both of them. One, that confirms that they are related. Gilgamesh is Nimrod, right? And then that also brings down the point of what do they have in mind to get this technology? How did they know the tech? Because that if you go down that rabbit hole, that's what I was going to say was that has to do with the Iraq War.
Hmm.
You've seen the Iraq War and they that tablet they got returned from the museum and all that stuff.
Yeah, they went
All
straight to the museum.
all that had to do. So I went down, it took me like 3 days, and I went down the rabbit hole of that email. And where it landed is the Clinton Library in New York, I believe. They have the file. It's accessible, but it's only printable in-house. They won't email it. So that email, and it has to do with Bill Clinton's trip to all of the Middle East areas, right before the Iraq War kicked off.
What?
And they have the documentation in the Clinton Library. They just won't email it. You got to come there and
So,
print it out.
so you're telling me Bill Clinton was over there in that region going around doing stuff right before the war broke out?
That's technically what that email is about, is his trip.
Would you suggest that his trip centered around this ancient stuff, this ancient knowledge and this bloodline, or Gilgamesh?
I wonder if that's what all the Middle East wars are about, or that they're
I,
really what they're really looking
what they're
for.
really, I think that war, at least in part, was definitely about that. Because
Because
it's
well, think of
it's
it.
Babylon. It's Babylon. Saddam had a palace overlooking the ruins of Babylon.
All right, so let's put all these together. So Saddam paid for renovations to the Ziggurat of Ur, which is in the I think it's Babel, but it's in the
Yeah,
plain of Shinar, right?
sure.
He did that. Um, that um, Clinton was there right before it, looking for. Well, he was on his trip. We got an email looking for those things based on the time frame of his trip, and then we also have the fact that right before and right after that war, the cuneiform tablet was found and returned because our government is so nice and so trustworthy that they'll be like, you know what? We'll do the right thing. I'm gonna give you this back. So if you put all four of those together, I think
And
it,
there's a fifth. The guy from Hobby Lobby got a bunch of these tablets from over there.
yeah,
And
I think I've heard about that.
okay, and was because he's a Christian guy apparently, and he's collecting all this stuff. And the U.S. government confiscated him and took it from him. Like he's not allowed to have it. And it's
So
it's
that's
tablets that have something to do with that museum over there where all this stuff was. It's the what do they call it? It's the museum of what's the city over there? The modern day name for it. Iraq. Anyway, the capital of Baghdad. It's the
yeah,
the
okay, yeah, yeah,
Museum
yeah,
of
yeah.
Baghdad, I think is what it is. And they said underneath that there was stuff too, like ancient tunnels and stuff. And it gets crazier from there. People say there was a Stargate down there and all this. Some, which I don't doubt it, honestly. it's
Well,
it's one of the oldest places in the world, man. I'll tell you what I think. And this is going to probably draw much conjecture, but fine. I suspect that the Garden of Eden was somewhere near Jericho.
yeah, yeah. I kind of feel you on that.
Okay. And I think that in the Bible, when Cain kills Abel, and it says Cain goes uh east of the garden
Mm.
to the land of Nod to establish the city. The first city was called Enoch. He named it Enoch after his son. But if you went east of Jericho, that's Babylon. That's modern day Babylon.
Mm.
So I think Babylon's always been a the other side of the seed war, the Cain. I think it's always been associated with Cain, personally.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
why it's all throughout this Bible. It's always been this spot for this other dark side of
Hmm.
of the paradigm. Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I'm telling you, we're still fighting for that area. That land is still being fought for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, People,
Yeah.
we just established the Clinton thing. People that know more than us behind the scenes are diving and digging into that area.
Oh man, yeah. And I talked to a guy who confirmed it. He was over there. He was a part of the war. He was one he said he knew the guys who went in
Mm.
and secured the location of
And
that
see,
tomb and everything.
the way I do my research, one occurrence is one occurrence. Twice is a trend, three times a pattern. So if I can find pieces to it, I can believe it, right? If it's one time, like it's one time. But if there's multiple pieces, there's too many pieces for that Iraq thing for that not to be a huge, gigantic story. You know what I mean? And it's just like with the research with the Bible. If I can find it somewhere place else, I can believe it. I can get
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is patterns. It's pattern recognition. And it's not just that, but that's a big part of it. You find the thread and you see what else is on this thread. I'm going to follow this thing. And then you start seeing the whole sweater. I'll just be cheesy and go with the full analogy on that one.
Yeah,
But but
right.
you start seeing a bigger picture of things. Yeah. And that's you mentioned the Epic of Gilgamesh. And like that's kind of what solidified this thing for me. And I'm not gonna the hammer on this any more than I already have, but this whole wacky idea of the female Elohim. Well, the Epic Gilgamesh mentions Lilith and Ishtar or Inanna, and the Bible mentions Lilith and Asherah
Mhm.
or Inanna. It's this, so I'm like, okay, it's in these old both of these old texts. Maybe this is something we should be looking at. Little threads like that is why I think the way I think too.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
And to go back to the Ishtar thing, that's what I found really interesting. And I wanted to pick your brain about was because, like, say it was all male. Well, Ishtar, Ashtaroth is like under Lilith is undeniable. It's clearly there. That female spirit's clearly there. How did that bridge? How
I
does
think
that
there's
bridge connect?
I think there's two. I think Lilith is separate too. And these are two.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
Lilith
yeah.
is absolutely yeah. Thousand
Different. She's
different.
different. She's like a
Yes.
demoness of some sort,
Yeah.
ancient primordial demoness. But how did they connect with? I don't know, man. That part's interesting because some of the old gods had male and female forms too.
Well, I got ready to say, some see the moon god as male, some the moon god
Right.
is female. The sun, unless I'm wrong, is
Yeah,
always
because
male.
it's day and night, so they see one as masculine and one as feminine.
Which is crazy because is that how God put it together? Right? Would that be a metaphor for man and male female? Right? I mean, not to
Yeah, I
stir a
know
whole
what you're
nother
saying.
conversation, but it's
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
just
Yeah.
thinking out loud, it's like, well, how did that bridge connect? And it's like, we established in 116 that they rule over the day and rule over the night, so they have significance, they have power. So
Hmm.
it's like, is that right in our face? And we didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Man, yeah, that's all this stuff is fun to look into and dig deeper because I think at the end of the
Mhm.
day there's something to all of it. And I was going to try to find something more. That Tomb of Gilgamesh thing is just wild to me, man. Always
Well,
has been.
you know what's interesting about that is it in Revelation the two buried Nephilim are referenced. It's in Revelation it's two buried Nephilim. In Clinton's email it's four buried Nephilim. But what's interesting is that in Revelation is before the little season. So it's like, is that why they couldn't find them? Because they've already come out? You know what I mean? That's something that no one can answer. But
Mm,
like, if they couldn't find them, that would explain why, is because they've already come out of the ground if we're in the little season. But that's all speculative.
yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things to touch on too with this is like we talked about it today. Gilgamesh, he was said to be partly God, right? Not
Mhm.
part little g God. There we go. And I think that's what you see with some of these royals in this bloodline. They go like we talked about Brutus, founded Britain. His his mom or his grandmother was said to be Aphrodite. And then you go back and you look at like um is it Odin? Yeah, there's a genealogy, an ancient genealogy that traces back to an actual guy named Odin who was a king.
Mm.
He's like a Gilgamesh, he was a half man, half god king.
Think of it like this: numbers. Think of it as a numbers game. We see in Revelation, Michael knocks down the dragon and his angels. We know that from Genesis 6, a third of the angels fell. In Revelation, we get a glimpse the myriad of thousands of angels, right? So it's established different points that there are millions and trillions of angels. A third of those angels fell with the dragon, but we don't know. We see a third. We don't know the actual number of angels that did fall because we don't know a third of a number that we don't know. I think an arguable point, like you just said, all these kings and Aphrodites and these rulers, they very well could have been that third. But those are points that don't make the story. You know what I mean? It's not gonna go down to the
Yeah,
fine brass of that.
yeah,
But if you look at sheer numbers, a third of a trillion or 100 trillion is gonna be a huge chunk, right? And then you look at, to get conspiratory, what is it, Columbia Pictures, when the stars go around it? And it's like, is that all you know what I mean? You know what I'm
what
saying?
the 200 watchers or something like that. Yeah,
It's a numbers game. And
yeah,
we're told a third of them, because it says it. It says it specifically. The angels are basically saying to themselves, all right, we can relax, but it sucks for everybody down there because now he's down there with all his angels. Literally says that. It's like, oh, we're good, but man, sucks
yeah,
to be you guys.
yeah,
Well, we know that they're here, and we know from different books that they can't go back up. So what are they going to do? And then breaking down, not to reiterate, breaking down the Great Deception, that's what happened. All of them came down here, Babylon, one accord, right? They have one plan, one nation. All right, infiltrate, change. You know, it takes 3 generations to forget God. That is a provable fact. Noah came, he had his kids had kids, and boom, no one knows about God anymore. So all it is just not telling the stories. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So if you got different areas, of course it's easy to be like, hey, let me tell you a story. And then the story changes a little bit. And that's how we get the different versions of the flood. You get the different this and you get the different that because those stories are being repeated by people that were either there or firsthand knowledge, right?
Right.
To like your point with the Kings and Brutus and all that. William Wallace. We can go down the line, Genghis Khan. There's a good chance that these were spiritual beings. It says in the Bible plain, be careful who you talk to. Could be an angel,
Hmm.
right? Zechariah, we see that those colored horses have always been here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the, or they've been, the kings have been taken over and are seriously being influenced by their these rulers of the unseen
Yeah.
realm, right? And I think that's Ezekiel. See if I have it here. Isaiah, I mean, we talked about Isaiah 34, and I won't go into this. We can end the show. I just want to point this one thing out. Isaiah 34, we talked about that when you get into Isaiah 36 and Isaiah 37, and it's talking about Hezekiah and King Sennacherib. And Isaiah, son of Amos, sent to Hezekiah, saying, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, because you have prayed to me concerning King Sennacherib of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken concerning him. So now the Lord is going to say something concerning King Sennacherib. And he says, she despises you. She scorns you. Virgin daughter of Zion. She tosses her head back behind your head. So it's like, I read that. I'm like, okay, who's she? Is that this female Elohim who's influencing this guy? They're doing all these rituals to these fallen G's anyway. So that's a deep cut. That's a weird one. A lot of people are going to be like, Tim, you're off your rocker, but I could take it as Isaiah 34 or 14 rather, and it's sort of similar. And there's other, but anyway, yeah, man. I mean, this has been fun. It's been fun. I feel like there was another point I wanted to make to something you said, but we we've been here for 3 hours almost now, so we can wrap it up, man. It's been fun talking to you though, for sure, for sure. Did you want to finish up with anything? Any final words? Go for it, man.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm a weird guy. I'm a niche in a niche. I've got my page, E. Adam Ferris, Instagram, YouTube, and Substack. A lot of great content. Um, where I'm at with producing content, again, I said it at the beginning. I'm only doing what I enjoy and really good conversations. Time is valuable, and I just want to enjoy the life the last couple of years that I have on this planet. Um, my point is just go back and read. Just go back and read. I'm not right. I'm not wrong. I'm not indifferent. These are just my interpretations. Go back and read, man. Want to know? Be interested in knowing. I'm not touching base on the religious aspect. That comes with it, right? That'll come. Just be interested. Be interested that history's a lie. Don't trust the government. And listen. That's
Yeah, let's
a thing that
go.
I'm supposed to end with. But like listen. Learn how to listen because God wants to talk to us. Just learn how to listen.
Awesome, man. Cool. Yeah. And you told everybody where to find you, right?
Yep, yep. Search my name, E. Adam Ferris, on Instagram, YouTube, and Substack.
Awesome, man. Thanks again for coming on. Been an enlightening show. Got into a lot of stuff. Always love when we can go deeper into some of these old texts, specifically the Bible, and show people what it's saying. And, there's a lot of different interpretations out there, but I think you summed it up nicely. What's important is that you get in there and you read and you have spiritual revelations of your own, and they in turn help you on your journey. They really do. It will shape you into a stronger person and a more spiritual person. I know a lot of people these days are wanting to be more spiritual, wanting to get more command over that aspect because we're spiritual beings. It's only natural for us to have that inclination. And I think you can find a lot of those answers in the Bible. I know I did. I did. And when I decided I was going to start taking it seriously, that's when it started taking me seriously, and it started actually showing me some things. And by it, I am talking about God. I'll just be specific there, so I'm not being too broad. I'm not talking about the universe. I'm talking about King of Kings here. So, but I'll wrap it up with that, man. Thank you again for coming on. Everybody check the description below. I'll have Adam's links down there. And as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.